Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
By Ottinger, up and down they go, 2-on-1. Kelleher Matthews, and he scores!
Donaldson, right wing, Mazzara. Low post, Janai. Bounce pass. Baker, Mazzara, three. Got it!
Holy
Got it!
Here's Isaacs. He'll launch from beyond center court. No good! Cincinnati knocks off 15th ranked Texas Tech, handing the Red Raiders their first home loss of the season.
Spencer behind the screen to Samson Johnson. Skips it right to Castle for three. And Steph fires it in. A triple. UConn by 2, 36-34. Look out. Castle starting to heat up. He's got a dozen.
A siege and a three at the horn. No good. And Purdue will win this game. The Purdue Boilermakers escape Madison, Wisconsin, with a 75-69 win over the Wisconsin Badgers.
Tominaga has struggled of late. That'll get him going. That's a massive shot for Keisei Tominaga.
Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Ana Bellinghausen joining me this morning. Ana, how are you?
I'm doing great, Ravi. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Ana filling in for Andrew this morning. So you had a busy weekend.
Sure did.
You were up in Brookings, South Dakota. What were you doing in Brookings, South Dakota?
Well, I don't typically vacation there, Ravi, but
especially not in February.
No, not typically in February, but
yeah.
I'll tell you what I was doing. I was on the sidelines for a CBS game between USD and SDSU. Great rivalry up there. It's been going on since like 1915 was the statistic. Pretty crazy stuff. So it's a long history of a college basketball rivalry. SDSU ended up coming out with the win by 3 points up at Frost Arena. So really cool just to see the atmosphere there in a mid-major level. They had like 3,500 people there, but in that arena, they're just all right on top of you. So
yeah.
it's a fun feeling. It's a fun environment, and great college basketball as always.
I was going to say, what's the capacity? Was that pretty close to capacity?
Yeah, that was capacity. Yeah.
Okay. That's all. It's always funny to me because obviously I've been to like Hinkle and places like that, but because of Creighton, I have no like real feel for how big some of these.
We think this is normal.
Yeah, well, like I know it's not normal, but I'm like, okay, how much outside of normal is it, right? I mean, I know there's a lot that are kind of in that like 8 to 10 range, but I do forget sometimes that there's, these Horizon or Summit League or like Missouri Valley teams. You're like, yeah, it's like we're like somewhere between like 4 and 6.
It makes it so fun to play in, though.
Oh yeah, those arenas are always, first of all, just incredibly loud because they're just not that big in general. It kind of reminds me of, you're probably not old enough for this. Did you ever go see
Civic Center?
Yeah, did you ever see anything at the Civic?
I actually had season tickets for the Omaha Beef in the Civic Center, and they had to like roll up the projector for them to kick extra points.
Yes.
That memory.
The Omaha Beef games, there was, the Omaha Beef have gone through a lot of different like ownership groups and management groups and stuff like that. But there's some of them that did a really good job of getting people packed into that building. And that was so loud.
It was fun. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. And especially when you get those like cowbells going, that going on in a kind of little bandbox stadium is incredibly loud. So I kind of imagine some of these mid-major venues, in like the Dakotas and stuff are kind of have like a civic feel to them.
One that's slept on is Oral Roberts down in Tulsa.
Oh, so I've actually been to Oral Roberts.
Beautiful facility, and it's a smaller one, but it's so fun there. They literally let the fans on the court during a timeout just to dance, and they like turn the lights off and flash them. Oral Roberts had like a 25-game win streak there at home just because of the environment, the hospitality that the crowd brings. They just pack it out every night, but it's just so fun to see those mid-majors have great environments.
Oral Roberts does have a super cool environment. Now, when I was down there, it was because we were taking an NAIA team down there to play them. And so the atmosphere wasn't like what it would be for a conference game or anything like that. But you're right. The facility's gorgeous.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I was stunned by how nice the facility was down there. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting little, I'm sure you're starting to like get a little tour of the Midwestern
I went up to Grand Forks too.
Okay.
At the Betty and the Ralph. So the Ralph is the hockey rink. It's gorgeous too. I mean, they have like cherry wood seats and everything. It's the detail up there it's intense.
Have you ever been? I don't think they've played Division I games there ever. Maybe they do. Have you ever been to the Corn Palace?
I have not. No.
And I think it's in Mitchell, South Dakota. They do a lot of smaller school tournaments up there. It's a big deal. It's like a corn museum and also a basketball venue. It's a little strange, but it's pretty cool up there. On the show today, we've got a lot of college basketball. That's kind of the flavor of the month right now, as we are in February, just I think 6 weeks away from March Madness. We're in the sweet spot.
Feels like March.
We're getting close. I know, if it could stay like this, that'd be terrific. We are getting close though to March Madness, which I'm very excited about. Coming up on the show today, we've got Sam McKewon at 8 a.m. from the Omaha World-Herald. At 9, we've got Vinnie Iyer. He covers the NFL for Sporting News. We've got quite a bit of football talk in here as well. And then in honor of the Grammys last night, I wanted to give out some awards for Nebraska and Creighton basketball through this point in the season. So we'll do that later on in the show as well. But to start off, I mean, we got to start off with that Nebraska-Illinois game last night, which was heartbreaking to say the least, because that was probably the best they've played on the road this year.
100%.
Certainly the best opponent they've played on the road this year. I know they beat Kansas State, but Kansas State and Illinois are not in the same league this year, I don't think. And there were so many opportunities where you just thought, this one's going to slip away. It kind of like you did against Wisconsin, where, they would get to a 7-point lead. They got to a 10-point lead late, and you're like, Nebraska's kind of running out of gas. And I have to say, I've been incredibly impressed with, I think it's just part of it's the stamina, because these guys are playing crazy minutes. You're getting 37, 33, 35 minutes. Right. And then the other part is, I think it's just the mental toughness that Fred Hoiberg's been able to instill in this team, or he was able to recruit guys that already have that, because there is zero quit in this team. And every time it feels like they are about one shot away from getting blown out or having the thing blown open, they always make the next play. And it's uncanny. Like, it is an uncanny ability that is super undervalued. And it's the reason they're able to stay in these games. And, against Wisconsin, obviously they win. Against Illinois, they force overtime. But it's kind of the one thing that sticks out to me the most, just the fact that they always make that play that they absolutely have to in order to keep themselves in it.
And I'm sure they heard all the talk about how they can't play on the road and can't compete on the road, and I'm sure that fueled them. And credit to the mental fortitude and Fred Hoiberg and whatever he's been saying to this team, because it's been working as of late. After that Wisconsin game, he said in the post-game press conference that was the most he's ever gotten into a team and the most animated he's ever been in a halftime locker room to really rally his group. And I think that's just carried over. And unfortunately, ball didn't bounce the right way for Nebraska at the end of it. But for them to force overtime, and down the stretch they were down by 9 points. And like you said, Robbie, they could have just folded there. They could have folded. There was 2 times they were down by 9. They hit a 3, and then Illinois hit another 3 back. So it's just the mental fortitude of that Nebraska team will take them far. And it's a team we all want to see, of course, in March, because they're so dangerous when they're clicking on all cylinders. But I don't know how the committee is going to look at this loss and how much they factor that in. Close loss on the road in overtime, and it's going to be interesting down the road to see how this one affects them. But man, if they could have got this one, it would be hard to deny them for March Madness.
It really would have. It would have been their 17th win. It would have been probably their second most impressive win of the season after the Purdue win, because I think Illinois on the road is a little more impressive than Wisconsin at home, but it's probably a coin flip there. But I really think they're in a spot now where, because of the narrative about their road woes has kind of become a thing, I do think they have to win a couple on the road in order for this to be viewed well, right? For a close loss for Illinois, at Illinois, to be viewed well, it has to be, they have to go out and get a couple of these other home game or road games so that it's not just like, well, they always lose on the road. Like, yeah, they came close a couple times, but they always lose on the road, whether it's, overtime at Rutgers or, overtime at Illinois or the close game at Minnesota when they blew a lead. It's going to have to be, they play well on, like, if you get a couple of these road games down the stretch, it changes the narrative to they can't get over the hump on the road to, look how often they played well on the road, right? Even though they didn't always win, they played well on the road several times in conference against tough opponents.
Right.
Where now it's just kind of like, what do we do with this team that cannot win away from
that? Can't
GPA?
Just be the one exception.
Yeah.
To their resume. I mean, I just pulled up the schedule too. So you got at Northwestern, which you have to mark down as a win, I think, if you're Nebraska in your mind, at least going into it. And then you get Michigan at home, Penn State at home, and then at Indiana. I mean, just looking at that slate, those are all coin flips, really, when you think about it. In the Big Ten, everyone's so good in that conference right now. So I think every game is going to be a battle, but man, like you said, Robbie, you got to get wins on the road and just prove to the committee, hey, that wasn't just a one-time wonder against Illinois, and we're the real deal. Yeah,
the ones that stick out to me the most are at Indiana and at Michigan. Those are the ones they're really teetering on that top 100. Indiana, I'm looking at Ken Palm. Indiana's 99, Rutgers is 100. Or excuse me, Michigan is 101, Rutgers is 100, but that's a home game. So you're looking at a couple of the worst teams in the Big Ten in Indiana and Michigan, which is funny to say that the worst teams are like right at that 100 mark, because that's still not terrible. But those are the ones you look at and you go, okay, those are ones they have to get and then take care of business at home. And I actually think you're in really good shape at that point. Northwestern is not a bad loss on the road. If you take that loss, obviously you'd like to just get back on the winning side of things after this one. But I think you've got to get at least 2 away games down the stretch for this to matter. But talking about that Illinois game a little more specifically, it was both frustrating and really exciting to see Tominaga get back on kind of a heater a little bit there. He was incredible yesterday, 31 points, 9 of 14 shooting. But the reason it was frustrating was because guys that had been playing well, like a CJ Wilcher, if they had just been able to maintain that level, this is absolutely a win for Nebraska. And that's the kind of the tough pill to swallow is you finally get Tominaga back on track. And then Wilcher, who'd been shooting like 60% from the field over the last few weeks, finally comes back to earth. And it's like, you couldn't have waited one more game. You wait one more game and you get a signature win. But Tominaga was on a different level yesterday.
Yeah, Tominaga, 31 points. And then to your point about CJ Wilcher not showing up as much in the stat sheet, also you got to look at Bryce Williams, only 7 points.
Yeah.
And those are the guys that you want the 10 to 12 points from per game that you can just kind of bank on. And Casey, I mean, he's been a little bit more up and down than we've seen him in compared to last year, but I mean, he's still an incredible talent and will go off in games like this. But again, to your point, Robbie, it doesn't always matter as much if you don't have that supporting cast to back you up.
Well, and the other thing that I thought was, and it's going to fly under the radar because he played well overall, but Rink Mast played really well, but was only 4 of 12 on 2-point field goals. That is, for a big guy, that number is way too low. He had a really hard time finishing around the rim and on some of his kind of post moves and stuff like that. He was 4-9 from 3, which you'll take. That's a really good number for him. And he hit some huge ones down the stretch, which is obviously a big reason Nebraska was able to stay in this thing. But that 4 of 12 from 2-point range really just jumps out to me as, man, what a bunch of missed opportunities, because he was getting a lot of good looks. He was kind of giving Illinois fits on the inside a little bit. And whether it was Hawkins or Geary trying to guard him, or I think Domask was on him a little bit as well. But man, his inability to just finish some of those, and I get there's contact. I get that I get their contested finishes, but those are shots that he's got to make if Nebraska's going to win these games.
Honestly, looking at the stat sheet, just the box score, I think it's incredible that Nebraska made it a 3-point game in overtime. Looking at their rebound margin,
my gosh, yeah. 50
total rebounds for Illinois, only 33 for Nebraska, and then O boards, 17 to 8-5 in favor of Illinois. I mean, to have yourself in the ball game with that amount of offensive rebounds against you, it's incredible. I mean, that's a credit to the defense too, but still, Fred Hoiberg's got to be just scratching his head at the rebounding battle.
Well, and that's kind of the place where, you mentioned against Wisconsin, he really got after him a little bit.
Yeah.
That to me is the place for Nebraska. If you're gonna get after these guys, it's got to be about the rebounding. I mean, the reason they were able to come back against Wisconsin in that second half was because they were down -12 on the boards in the first half. They were +6 in the second half, right? They ended up only losing that offensive rebounding or their overall rebounding battle by 6 or 7. This one, they could not keep Illinois away from their own missed shots. I mean, Illinois rebounded almost 50% of their missed shots. They missed 41 total shots. They got 17 of those back. That is a number that is going to kill you, especially when you look at Nebraska. They missed 39 shots. They got 5 of them back.
And Illinois was just straight up missing at some points of the ball game late in the stretch where they had that 9-point lead. It could have easily been 15 points.
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like that's and sometimes it seems like luck. Nebraska always seems to get that next stop, whether it's just, I mean, there were some, you're right. Illinois had some wide open looks that they just bricked, especially from 3. And I mean, like Terrence Shannon went 3 of 10 from 3-point range. Harmon, who's usually a good shooter, went 0 for 4 off the bench. Like you had these guys that are normally really good shooters for Illinois miss some pretty good looks. There was a couple of them kind of in a secondary transition where these guys are wide open because Nebraska lost them trying to get back and they don't come anywhere close. And that's kind of the funny thing about this team is it's not always even they did something to get the stop or whatever. There does seem to be a little bit of an element of they catch some breaks in these situations. Like there was one where the Illinois guy, I think it was Guerrier, missed a dunk in a spot that you're like, that probably puts it away. And then he just misses a dunk and Nebraska ends up with it. And you're like, that's such a bizarre, because Nebraska didn't do anything to make him miss that dunk. It was such a bizarre sequence.
I remember seeing that and just saying to myself, Nebraska has to win this ball game now.
Right?
Because of that. Like, you got so lucky on multiple breaks down the stretch against a great Illinois team at home in front of a rabid fan base, and they still ended up not capitalizing on it. I mean, that's got to be a heartbreaker for Husker fans.
Honestly, and switching gears a little bit from Nebraska, it kind of reminded me of a couple of the plays down the stretch with Creighton and Butler on Friday night, where when Creighton forced that turnover with about 10 seconds left, down 1, I was like, oh man, Creighton's going to get this one.
Right.
Like when you get that turnover in that spot and you don't have to foul them, that's that opportunity that you're like, hey, that's what we were waiting for. Like, let's do this. And then unfortunately, Trey Alexander dribbles it out of bounds off his foot. And I mean, they did a good job of kind of extending the game and fouling and keeping up with Butler. But that was the one opportunity where you look at and you go, they really had to take advantage there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to put it bluntly. I mean, Creighton lost that game. They had their opportunities, and unfortunately, the bounce doesn't go their way, and it's unfortunate, but it's something that you have to look at afterwards and say, hey, this is what we could have done better. That was our chance, and we didn't execute the way we wanted to. But I mean, that's also just a credit to how good the Big East is. And you have to know that every single team coming in playing in Omaha or at UConn or anywhere at Xavier, these are all potential quad 1 wins for these teams that are lower in those Big East standings. Of course, they are going to come in and Creighton and UConn and those teams, Marquette, always have a target on their backs. So you know you're getting their best shot every single night. It's a tough one to drop on the road or on at home for Creighton, and especially in that fashion when you had the ball game in your hands. But yeah, it was a tough one to swallow for Creighton fans.
Well, and I think the worst part about it was that was probably, I said this on Twitter, I think that was probably one of the worst defensive performances I've seen by Creighton in several years. I mean, it was kind of astounding how little resistance they put up to Butler getting to the exact spots they wanted to be on defense. My buddy Matt DiMarinis, he does stuff for the White and Blue Review. He looked it up for me because I asked the question. Creighton hadn't got 2 stops in a row for the entire second half. It had been from the 2-minute, 27-second mark in the first half that they got 2 consecutive stops on Butler. 2 consecutive trips where Butler did not get points in one form or fashion. You're never going to win that game.
No.
Like, that is one of the more astounding things. Because I kind of said, I was kind of thinking about it during the game. I was like, I don't know when the last time Creighton stopped Butler 2 times in a row. And so I shot it off in the group chat. I go, am I crazy? Has this happened? And, after the game, because Matt is great at figuring this kind of stuff out, he sends me 227 first half was the last time they got 2 stops in a row.
Wow.
That is a brutal defensive performance. And I get that Butler was making shots. I get it. It's fine. They shot 60% from 3, 55% from the field. I get that they were making shots. Part of that is because they were getting wherever they wanted to go on defense. It's not all just, they were on a heater, nothing we can do. Like, that's not how defense works. You don't just throw your hands up and be like, I guess they're making everything today. Oh, well. I couldn't believe the fact that there was no plan B for their defensive coverage. Like, there just was none. And for me, it was that the way they were guarding those ball screens where they chased through them and then Ryan Kalkbrenner drops off. There was a foul early on Stephen Ashworth when he was chasing, I think it was DJ Davis. He was chasing DJ Davis over a screen and he fouled him on a 3-pointer. After that, he was late chasing him every single time because he didn't want to foul him. Well, if you're late chasing and can't force him into the drop coverage, then they get whatever they want in that mid-range zone. And listen, I get it. You're like, you'll live with the mid-range shots. Not when they're wide open. And if they're making a ton of them, you have to change something up. And Creighton never adjusted. That was the part to me that was like, I get that's your base defense. Where's the changeup? You don't have anything else you can throw at them because after giving up 45 in the first half and then having it be clear that they're going to score at least that many in the second half, you have to throw something else at them, and they never did.
And Creighton is one of the best perimeter defenses in the entire Big East, which was also a little puzzling to me of why they couldn't stop Butler on the perimeter. Yeah, you have a great shooting night, but there's still, at some point, you have to say, hey, second half, no more threes, right? Like, there had to be some adjustments. I don't think there was, but Rob Anderson had some good stats he put out as always. He said, CU has also been 76-4 under Coach Mack when scoring 90-plus points, 143-2 since 2000 when shooting 54% or better from the field. Creighton wins the shootouts.
Yeah, Creighton was on one offensively as well, right? It wasn't just Butler, which honestly, I was as shocked about that as anything was that Butler was just like, yeah, we'll run with you.
Yeah, and they did.
Yeah.
Credit to them.
Obviously they did, and they ended up coming out with a victory as well. Just, I could not believe, and we can maybe talk about this later, I could not believe that they didn't have, or at least refused to go to an alternative plan when Butler was just shredding their defense. And maybe you just say, hey, we have to execute what we do better, and I get that. But at a certain point, you have to be like, hey, we're not executing tonight. Let's try something else. And Creighton never made that call. All right, coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back.
Here is Damask at the other end.
My brand new album comes out April 19th. It's called The Tortured Poets Department.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Here is Damask at the other end for Illinois. They leave him open. Now he fires it to Shannon. Drive in the lane. Layup. Good for the left hand. High-level playmaking going on. 81-78 Illinois by 3.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can give us a call at 888-638-4876 on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. Or you can, of course, hop into those YouTube comments as TK and Travis have already been active in there for this morning. Travis says, I bet that CU Butler was the final leg of a 7-game parlay for Andrew, and he lost. Is that why he's gone today? No, that's the that is not the that is not the reason Andrew's gone today. He'll be back tomorrow, and he can tell you why he's gone today. But nothing big. He's fine. He's not reeling from the loss of a 7-leg parlay that I'm aware of, at least. TK says, I've had that Paramount Plus ad stuck in my head since Friday. Which, did you see that?
No, I didn't. What was it?
Oh my gosh. So it's a super.
Oh, wait. Yes. No, I did see that. I think I lost brain cells watching it, actually.
First off, how dare you? Secondly, so it's one of the Super Bowl ads that they, leaked. I'm sure they released.
Which I don't know why they do that.
I don't either, because if I had caught that live, it probably goes down as one of my all-time favorite Super Bowl commercials.
Right, but now it's ruined.
It is a little bit. Now, I don't know, but it is like a full 2-minute clip. So if you're going, I don't know how much the ads are going for per 30 seconds this year, but that's an unbelievably expensive block if you're taking up the 2 full minutes. So maybe they're only going to show like a snippet of it or an abbreviated version during the Super Bowl. But still, anytime you're going to involve one of my all-time faves, Sir Patrick Stewart.
Anything Patrick Stewart does is gold.
I love Patrick Stewart. I'm like an old school Star Trek nerd.
Mm-hmm. That was the best one.
And so
Next Generation.
Is that this one? Spock?
So that's the original series. Okay. That's Star Trek with like Kirk and like James what's his name? William Shatner. But no, Next Generation was the next one. And Patrick Stewart was in that. Of course, also he's in the X-Men movies and all that kind of stuff. Very famous actor, but seeing him sing Creed was maybe one of the highlights of my life.
Are you a big Creed fan?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. I'm one of those.
I could have guessed.
Yeah. I don't know how. I mean, we talk about it in the group chat a lot. I'm not sure how you've missed that.
I've seen the Creed talk. Yeah, I try to ignore it.
Same here.
How dare you, Shane? Travis.
But anytime you want to talk about Sir Patrick.
Yeah. Patrick Stewart's the best. Love him. The Greg Olson Hulu commercial was great last year. I don't remember that one.
I don't remember that one either.
I'm gonna have to look it up in the break. But I also, me, think kids are a tough hang. So him like throwing a child in the ad was right up my alley. I was like, man, you guys are just like hitting all my.
Arnold was just a trip. Why was he there?
Why were any of them there?
That's true.
I was expecting it to be Stewie when he said the football head.
I know.
Yeah, that's a good point, Shane.
I don't know if I don't think Stewie's a Paramount property though. I think they were all part of the Paramount network, so.
Poor Tua had to be in there too.
Dude, that was kind of my favorite part is he just roasts Tua. He's like, not up to the big moment, huh?
Yeah, that was
outstanding. I'm surprised Tua signed up for that.
Me too.
That was fun. I'm sure everybody will see that by Super Bowl Sunday. Next week, actually, Shane has gotten us a Super Bowl commercial specialist that'll come on and talk. What is that, Tuesday next week, Shane?
That is correct, Tuesday.
So Tuesday next week, we will we'll talk. We'll dig deep on the Super Bowl commercials. The real show.
No, I'm always up for Super Bowl ads. I actually would run a Super Bowl ad event at school at UNO.
Mm-hmm.
So I was part of the ad club, and we would break down all the ads for people and bring in marketing directors and have them tell us the ethos and pathos behind all of them.
What exactly is an ad club?
That sounds super fun, actually.
So advertising club.
Well, I assumed that much.
Essentially,
what does that club do?
That's a good question. I'm just kidding. I actually was the president of it. No big deal. But yeah, we basically were just a ad club of different advertising journalism majors, and so we would have monthly meetings and talk to different ad directors across Omaha and just get to know their business and stuff. And then we'd help other companies with their advertisement, social media and stuff like that. It was kind of just a way to get involved in the community and then find other people in your major and make some friends.
All right. Okay. Interesting. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was the president. Well, actually, I was I forgot what word they used for it, but I was the president of the Latin club in high school. I was a big Latin nerd. So, I don't. Were you the president of anything over there, Shano?
No.
The Creed Club.
I would be the president of the Creed Club. Although we've got some. I can't tell if the younger people in our chat like Creed ironically or if they actually like Creed. I can't tell. So I
think it's just a joke. Like,
well,
like how Nickelback kind of has become a joke too.
First off, how dare you even put those two in the same sentence? That's incredibly offensive. I would like to think that our dear friends like Elijah and David are not joking about how much they love Creed.
I think they genuinely enjoy, but I think it's become like a meme to our generation.
Well, I think that's rude, but that's
sorry.
That's fine.
It's going to happen to all of the bands that I love growing up,
Probably. I mean, everything kind of becomes a meme at some point. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. Moving on to other things. Is any other thoughts on either Nebraska or Creighton over the weekend on just their performances? Because I am a little concerned moving forward about Creighton's defense. It's kind of been, obviously that was the worst performance they've had this year.
Yeah.
I don't know, my Siri's freaking out over here. But it kind of felt like the dam broke a little bit on Friday night, and I'm curious, I'm concerned that against better teams, because Butler's fine. Like they're, I think 15-7. They're a fine basketball team. They're middle of the pack, likely an NIT team based on their resume. But I'm concerned about what the better teams that are left on Creighton's schedule will do to them, specifically a team like Marquette.
Yeah.
Will do to them if that's what Butler did to them.
I don't know. I think it's really going to depend on if the defense shows up throughout the rest of conference play here. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule right now. You go at Providence. That is not a safe bet as a win whatsoever. That is a rowdy fan base.
Well, and they always play terrible at the dunk.
That also is true. They've had some rough games out there. Yeah. And then you go at Xavier. Like, these are all great teams again. And the Big East has a great parity this year. There's no just easy win really on the schedule. I mean, they've already played DePaul twice, right? So
yeah, so
those are gone.
I mean, the easiest one left is Georgetown at home, and then after that, Seton Hall at home is the next easiest win, which is crazy because that's not an easy game.
No, not at all. So it is a little concerning right now, but I mean, I have full faith in Greg McDermott. I mean, I always think back to last year and the 6 games they lost in a row and the world was ending and that team went to the Elite Eight. So I don't think you can really judge too much. I think they'll get whatever needs to be fixed. And I'm honestly glad it's happening in early February rather than late February or God forbid March.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. I wonder how much of it is fixable with the current roster pieces, right? You know, obviously they don't have some of the athleticism on the perimeter that they had last year with like an Arthur Kaluma.
Sure, length for sure.
Yeah, some of the length and athleticism there. Obviously, Ryan Nembhard was a little quicker than Stephen Ashworth. Although in general, I do think Ashworth has played a lot better defensively in recent weeks. I think he's kind of gone from like a liability to at least average defensively, which is, if he's making shots the way he has been recently, average is more than good enough defensively. He's sort of, I mean, Tominaga's obviously got a better track record scoring, but they kind of play a similar role with their offenses where if they're not playing well offensively and making shots, it becomes really hard to have them out there sometimes because they can be a liability on defense a little bit.
Yeah, I think Stephen has been better on defense too. And you heard McDermott even say that in the press conference that he was sort of a defensive liability, but now he's gotten up to the level. And I think that's also a switch from playing at Utah State and, you know, having that jump to the Big East and the type of athleticism and talent there is in this league. Not to say that there wasn't in the Mountain West, but still, when you look at just the teams that they have to play day in and day out, that is a huge jump to kind of fit in with this team. And I think you're seeing Stephen grow so much, but I mean, defense, man, it's going to have to be something they figure out on the identity side with Creighton. I kind of said that all year that was going to be the Achilles heel to this team, and it showed against Butler. But again, full faith in Greg McDermott to figure something out, but we'll be curious to see what it is, what he can do to work with the talent that they have on this team.
Yeah, I just like them to be able to show a couple different looks.
Sure.
If somebody gets comfortable with what they're doing the way Butler did, I'd love them to be able to have something else to go to. Coming up next, we will wrap up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
I think, I feel like every step that you take in this sport and really in life, it's for a reason. And I think this whole year building that trust like we talked about was for a reason to be equipped and well prepared for this next year when everybody is looking at me. So I do feel like I'm prepared, I'm ready, and I can't wait.
Way for the Huskers. Sitting out for Tominaga. He is 4 of 5 from the field. And the other way for the Huskers.
That's something Nebraska.
We will be back. Listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
The other way for the Huskers.
That's something Nebraska's going to do on the dribble drive. They're meeting you outside the lane.
A dozen now for Tominaga. He is 4 of 5 from the field.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are also live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And we are brought to you by your Omaha Supernovas. They got their first win of the season. Anna is repping
Let's go.
Supernovas gear as well. They got their first win of the season with a sweep over San Diego on Saturday. And they will be back at home on Wednesday at 7 p.m. against the Vegas Thrill. That's 7 p.m. at CHI Health Center on Wednesday. Make sure you go to supernovas.com to find out whatever you want. You got tickets, you got schedule, you got game notes, team stats, everything you could need. Or you got a shop on there too if you want to get some gear like Anna's rocking over there as well. Those are your Omaha Supernovas. That's supernovas.com. Before we get into the Supernovas match from over the weekend, we've got a caller on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. My guy, Evan Stone. Evan, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on, man? How we doing?
We're doing pretty well. We're kind of just rehashing some tough losses for Nebraska and Creighton over the weekend. For people that don't know, I went to college with Evan. He is the world's foremost expert on Illinois athletics.
Ooh.
Wow.
I think that's fair.
I'll receive it.
I think that's fair. I don't know anyone that knows more about Illinois athletics than you. So were you at the game last night, Evan?
I was not at the game last night. We had some other things going on, so I was able to watch it, but I wasn't able to get over there for it.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts as it looked like Illinois had that thing in the bag, and Nebraska makes that late comeback. What was it, 72-62, and Nebraska's able to come back and tie it with an 11-1 run down the stretch there. Like, what's going through your head as that's happening?
Well, I mean, honestly, I wasn't super surprised because the whole game itself was just a wild game. Like,
yes.
And not just in the sense of, like, everything was chaotic. It just, nothing made sense throughout that whole game. And so when Illinois jumps up 10 with about 3 minutes left, you almost saw everyone shut down, and then Nebraska just put it in a whole nother gear.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird because then going into overtime, I was pretty confident we were still going to win. It was just I had no idea what it was going to look like pulling it out.
So as you're let's rewind to the beginning of the game now. As you're watching Keisei Tominaga kind of just go nuclear on you a little bit. He had 15 points super early, just a total bounce back game for him after his poor showing against Wisconsin. Like, what's going through your ear? Like, it's just going to be one of those days where this guy just shreds us?
Well, here's the thing. Illinois basketball stadium is the greatest get-right facility for anyone who's gone through a slump that's not on Illinois. And so, I mean, it was pretty obvious that when Keisei saw – so he actually – where we attend church on Sunday morning is where the visiting teams stay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to see the guys, for breakfast in the morning, and Keisei just had a swag about him in the morning, and you just knew it was going down. And so
what do you eat for breakfast?
Well, I tried to put some things in his orange juice, but I was afraid to get the Jordan treatment. And so, it was rough. We knew he was going to go off. And then on the flip side, the crazy thing is he's hitting shots that, Terrence is all over him.
Yeah.
And Ty Rogers is all over him. And he's just draining these. I think I texted you last night. His heat check in the first half was the most hilarious Ravi Lulla heat check I've ever seen in my entire life. Where he hit 2 threes and then just like a step across half court. I'm chucking, just letting it happen.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, the flip side is in Illinois' 2 best shooters wide open threes, and they went 0 for 10 from 3-point last night. So that's what I'm saying. It was just a crazy, wild game. But yeah.
Yeah, the difference between me and Tominaga is he actually waited to make 2 first before he took his heat check. He didn't just come out. He didn't just come out the gates with
logo.
it.
Well, when you put the work in, you can come out the gate with whatever you want. I keep saying Keisei Tominaga is the second greatest shooter in Nebraska, so behind number 45.
I appreciate that, Evan. He might be a little bit better athlete than I am, though. At this point, at least. At this point, I'm getting up there. Evan, what's Illinois looking like the rest of the way out? Like, where do you, as you kind of look at this team? Obviously, they had Terrence Shannon out for a while with his suspension. He's back now. Like, what's the ceiling for this team in your mind?
Well, I think the floor is really high. I don't know how high the ceiling is because even as you saw last night, I think they're a steady team. They're top 5 offensive efficiency in the nation right now, and so when they are able to just do what they're supposed to do, which there was a stretch when they built that 10-point lead when they came out in the second half and they're driving and dumping down and they're scoring in the paint and they're getting wide open layups and dunks, and that's what they're supposed to do. And then they start getting into some hero ball and someone makes a 3 and they start chucking threes and that's what allowed Nebraska to come back. So that's why I say, I think their floor is high, but their ceiling, they're just so limited in being able to pull away from teams, which is pretty frustrating. So this stretch is going to be big. Coach Hoiberg last night in his press conference said, we got another game on Wednesday. It feels like we played 100 games in 2 weeks, and Illinois is at the end of that stretch, and so we're off until Saturday, and so we just finished a crazy, game, 2 days, game, 2 days, game, and so it'll be interesting to see after this whole kind of, as best as you can get into college basketball season bye week, how they respond coming out of this week, and but they've got both Wisconsin and Purdue at home. So both of them come into their place. So technically Illinois controls their destiny. I don't know what they'll do with it, but they put themselves in a position to succeed down the stretch.
Stoney, I appreciate your time. I know you were dropping the kids off for school. I appreciate you calling in, giving us a little insight on Illinois and, making people know my bona fides as a shooter out here. So I appreciate that.
Hey, come on. You're a real hooper. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Stoney. That's Evan Stone. He is the world's foremost expert on Illinois basketball and my college roommate. So, Stoney, be good. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
He's a good dude. He lives out in Champaign. But no, it was really interesting to watch that game last night because he's right. You saw that their inability to close the door on Nebraska, even when they had those opportunities. And it was, I'm sure, frustrating for an Illinois fan, but it certainly gave Nebraska fans life a little bit. We do have a couple minutes here. I want to talk. I know you were at the Supernovas last night.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we at least touch on them in case the show gets away from us, as it tends to do sometimes. How was the atmosphere Saturday night compared to game one? And obviously Supernovas got the win, which is even better.
Yeah, I mean, atmosphere-wise, I would say about the same, and that is really impressive to me. It was over 11,000 again, and
awesome.
So now Omaha, and the Supernovas specifically, hold the top 2 most attended U.S. pro women's volleyball games. So pretty amazing stuff.
Absolutely.
But I'm not really surprised, honestly, just based upon how much this city and state loves volleyball. But in talking to Coach Collier after the match, he was just like, it's so nice knowing that this wasn't a one-time thing. It wasn't, let's just put on an event and a spectacle, break a record, and then never come back. It was, no, we're here to support this team. And I think the Supernovas team showed out in the way of how much talent that they have. And in a sweep, too, against a good San Diego team, I think they were just a lot more connected. And you kind of see the pieces coming together because in all reality, they really had a mini camp with the players, most of the players that they knew or thought would be on their team, and then we're playing a huge match at CHI Health Center, the first one ever in America for this league, in front of 11,000 people, right? It's so hard to be mentally and physically ready for that, especially when you're just putting a whole new team together that everyone has to figure out each other and strengths and weaknesses and whatnot. But the Supernovas team is really good. I mean, they're loaded with talent. They're going to be so fun to watch throughout the rest of play, and nobody should be discouraged by that first 5-set loss. I mean, they almost reverse swept, first of all, but I think this 3-0 sweep just really showed the amount of talent that Omaha has, and they should be excited about it and definitely come out to the next match on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear the moment on that first match was really big, and you could kind of see they were a little tight, not super cohesive. That really was not the case on Saturday. Yeah. They came out of the gates playing great, 25-17, 25-19, 25-22. They were able to get the sweep against San Diego. As I mentioned earlier, they've got Vegas coming up on Wednesday. Make sure you get to supernovas.com to get tickets and to check out their schedule. Coming up next, we've got Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We are doing pretty well. Just instant gut reactions after that Nebraska kind of gut wrencher against Illinois last night.
Oh, great effort, great play. Certainly, there's a review of that foul right before the end of regulation. One could argue that Brad Underwood technical early in the game paid off late because that's probably not a call that you're going to make that often based on what happened. But Illinois opened the door with only making one of the 2 free throws. It really would have felt unjust if he had made both of them and just won the game right there.
Right.
That did not happen. It went to overtime, and Nebraska wasn't able to make shots. And so, I thought they played really well, played really hard. I think Illinois is a very athletic and aggressive team, talented. probably this might be Illinois' best chance to make a significant run into the second weekend. If they get the right draw, they'll be a tough team to beat because they don't have to worry so much about throwing it into a 7-foot center. So they were challenging, and I thought Nebraska played well. Now, I mean, look, anybody would have said Sunday was a hard win. The biggest game of the year is Wednesday. That's between two bubble teams. Everybody knows it. It's on Northwestern's floor. You go win that game at Northwestern, you're going to make the NCAA tournament, and that's kind of what it is. And if they don't, they're going to have to find another commensurate win somewhere along the way. But you go get that quad win one win, and you're going to be in really good shape for the NCAA tournament. People want to put this Nebraska team in. I think that's just reality, and Wednesday's game is absolutely huge, just huge.
Sam, as we get further and further down the schedule, obviously these opportunities for road wins are getting fewer and fewer. How much more of a magnifying glass? I mean, you said obviously at Northwestern, Wednesday is the biggest game of the season, but as those opportunities continue to dissipate, how much of a magnifying glass is it going to be on each Nebraska away game to prove that, kind of some of these earlier ones, whether it's, Minnesota, whether it's Rutgers, these ones that have slipped away on the road are not who they are away from PBA.
Right. So, I think they've got 4 road games left. Indiana's got a wonky NET, but they're a pretty good team. Then they have Ohio State and then Michigan, which isn't a very good team, and is just 8 spots behind Indiana in the net rank. So, you can beat Michigan and you can say you got your road win. Right. That's one thing. But I think the Northwestern one is just huge. Again, if they win that one, I think they go to 17-7, and then you just look at the rest of the schedule. You can close your eyes and see 3 more wins left. You could actually look at that rest of that schedule and see 7 wins. To be honest with you, it's there. I mean, this is not a strong end of the schedule. Nebraska's got a chance. You can, if you lose to Northwestern, then you probably got to win 4 down the stretch, 4 of the last 7 to get to 20. If you beat Northwestern, you got to win 3, and the schedule's very favorable. So we'll see what they do. They can win those 3 at home. Is my point. Let's say they win Northwestern, then they beat Michigan, they beat Penn State, they beat Minnesota. Well, they're at 20. There you go, and they still got Rutgers to go. And so they got a real chance here to. Wednesday's game is just, again, it's huge. It's a huge game, and we'll see what they do.
We're talking with Sam McKewon of the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, how important do you think it was for Casey to get kind of back into a groove against Illinois, even though it didn't end up in a win?
Very important. He needs to see shots go down, and he was able to do that. I think Nebraska benefits from having 2 guys right now that are making shots, Casey and Wilter. But Casey's got to get the ball every game, and I think Nebraska got a little bit away from that against Wisconsin. He wasn't playing great, but Casey can get shots at the rim, and he can get mid-range shots, and there's a lot of different things he can do. The one shot I wish he hadn't taken was they're up 36-29, and he takes a 35-footer. That was unfortunate. That's not the moment for that shot. The percentage of it going in is very low. That's a moment where you grind 30 to 45 seconds off the clock, and obviously I know the shot clock is shorter than that, but you kind of grind the clock and you try to get the best shot possible and get that thing to 10, and then I think it just looks different. I think maybe Illinois has to take longer to come back in the second half. I mean, Illinois came out with the house on fire, so you really can't let your guard down. Casey had a good game though. He needed to have a good game. He can have another good game on Wednesday. He can have a great game on Saturday. I mean, this is he tends to heat up as the season goes on, and this is his month. So he started it well.
Sam, as you kind of look at the way the Wisconsin game played out, you look at the way the Illinois game played out for Nebraska, are you what sticks out to you as kind of a factor in their ability to not get put away? There were a couple times, I mean, not a couple, there were a bunch of times against Wisconsin where it felt like one or two more shots, one or two more stops for Wisconsin, and that thing totally gets away from Nebraska. Felt like there were a couple times against Illinois where one or two more shots or one or two more stops, and that thing gets away from Nebraska. Like, what do you think that is about this team that they seem to almost always make the play in that spot?
They have depth, and, as games wear on, teams may not have quite as much depth as Nebraska, so it helps that if a guy's not clicking, they can take him off the court and they can put somebody else out there and see what happens. And they got guys that aren't even playing that, that could help them if they needed it. So I think that's part of it, is just the ability to bring a bunch of guys to a solution. You can put Sam Hoiberg out there and he's going to get you a couple defensive stops. That's probably the key to it is they've got waves. They've got waves of players who can do things for you. And then the other thing is, you don't know which player is going to be hot from night to night. I mean, Bryce Williams could have a night. Rick Mess didn't have his best game Sunday, but he made a couple of threes. Casey had a night. So like you never quite always know who's going to be the person who steps forward and makes those plays or makes that moment. And so I think Nebraska's depth helps them. I will say this. I think Wisconsin's going to come a little bit back down to earth. They're performing above what my preseason expectations would have been of Wisconsin. And I think they're going to come back down to earth a little bit. They missed some shots at Nebraska. They missed some shots against Purdue. I understand that they're playing two teams that they should beat handily this week in Michigan and Rutgers. It's not going to surprise me if they lose one of them. And, so there's some moments down the stretch of Wisconsin season where I'm going to be curious to see if they can kind of keep it on the track. That's a very nice team. But, again, I don't think there's much gap between Nebraska and Wisconsin. I really don't. I think they're very similar teams. It's just that, and let's just see where they're at the end of the year. If Wisconsin is, I don't think Wisconsin's going to be at 25 wins at the end of the year. Let's put it that way. I think Nebraska could be at 20 or 21, and I think Wisconsin could be at 21 or 22. And the only difference between those wins will be what they did in the non-conference. So Wisconsin, to its credit, tested itself in the non-conference and won a few games in that realm. But let's just see. Let's just see what the records are at the end of the year. I think they'll be closer than people imagine right now.
Sam, is this Big Ten men's basketball tournament going to be one of the best in recent memory?
It'll be tight. It'll be close. I think last year's was decent. I don't know that you could say right now that anyone other than Purdue will win it. But what'll be interesting about the tournament, Anna, is that there's going to be some teams that go there who either feel like they have to win at least one to make the NCAA tournament, or, they do need to win one, or they need to win two. They might even need to make a run. And so I think that's going to be interesting to watch. There's going to be teams right on the bubble there. I mean, Nebraska's going to be one of those teams that's on the bubble. I mean, I don't know. What about Michigan State? I mean, Michigan State's interesting, right? They have a good net ranking. They haven't won a lot of games. That's a challenge for them, and they don't have the tiebreaker against Nebraska. Nebraska's got some key tiebreakers along the way. They got one against Michigan State. They got one against Kansas State. Now Kansas State's falling apart, but they have some wins that I don't know that Michigan State's going to be able to claim. And then at that point, it's going to become something along the lines of, Tom Izzo. No, that's not going to work. Michigan State's going to have to finish strong, and they're going to have to put their resume out there like everybody else. So they're probably going to go to Minneapolis having to win one. We'll see with Northwestern. That's the other one to watch, and then Nebraska. So there'll be some really intense games at the Big Ten tournament, Anna. Yeah.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, you kind of got my wheels turning about Wisconsin a little bit because, when I saw that, this is not to take anything away from the Nebraska win because that was obviously a phenomenal performance. But, I saw that 6 next to their name And I just look at that team and I'm like, that doesn't look like the 6th best team in the country. You know, is that one of those they've kind of outperformed their level of talent at this point in the season?
A little bit. You know, they're going to drop down to 13 or 14 or 15. Yeah.
Which feels more appropriate, right?
Yeah. This will be a big week. It's a hard week for them. You know, again, their schedule was constructed oddly. They have a ton of road games all in kind of a stretch there. I think they've got 5 in 20 days. And so they just played, you know, Nebraska and lost. Now they go to Michigan and Rutgers. If they win those 2, I think maybe you're okay. They're going to be a top 10 team. I don't think they're going to win them both. I think they're going to lose one of them. And then then down the stretch, I just think they're going to run into some tough games with hungry teams. You know, I wouldn't expect Iowa and Maryland to be NCAA tournament teams, but you never know. Maybe there's a way to catch up to them and put themselves in the mix. So, you know, yeah, I think Wisconsin's done a really nice job with the players they have. I just don't, you know, and this is different for everybody. College basketball isn't as strong as it used to be, but I don't think they're as good as North Carolina, and I don't think they're as good as Tennessee. And indeed, they lost to Tennessee earlier this year. So, you know, there's teams that I just think are probably going to end up being better than Wisconsin. We'll find out what happens. I felt that way about them 2 years ago when they were a 3 seed and lost to Iowa State in the second round, and they didn't look like the better team when they played Iowa State. So Wisconsin's a sum of their parts, greater sum than its parts, and that's a testament to what they do. But it also, come into tournament time, they dip back down a little bit.
So you're on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline. If Nebraska played Creighton in Lincoln tomorrow, what would the line be at this point in the season?
Well, I mean, Nebraska might be favored. I can tell you that. I think Creighton will win the game. Creighton's really energized playing at PBA. I think that's evident. I mean, Creighton played an incredible game there, and they went to Seton Hall, and they played an incredible game at Seton Hall. The only game they did not play well was Connecticut, and I think that has more to do with Connecticut. And UNLV, they didn't play well that day either. No, Creighton is a road team. I think those guys like going and, you know, punching the opposing crowd, you know, like, you know, quieting them down. I don't mean literally punching them, but
just blown kisses.
Right. I think they like doing that. I think at times for Creighton, it's kind of hard at home. I think, you know, that crowd has gotten to the point where they kind of expect Creighton to win. And they get juiced when Connecticut's in town, and you know, so I think where Creighton thrives in road environments, and you know, so I think Creighton's just fine. It's unfortunate they lost to Butler again. I think their crowd needs to show up for, you know, the whole game and be a presence, and then, you know, I think somebody on that bench is going to have to earn playing time. I really don't think it's that Greg McDermott doesn't want to play his bench. I think they've struggled to earn that, and we'll learn a lot this week. You know, you mentioned Creighton on the road. Well, they've got 2 games this week. One of them's against the hardest road environment in the league at Providence. I think everybody would say that's true. And then they go to Xavier, a team that Xavier matches up well with Creighton. They have for years, and it's going to be a hell of a battle. It'll be, you know, 93-92. So this is a week where if you want to say, okay, what's Creighton made of? You're going to find out this week. This is the week where you're going to learn a lot about who they are. And I think what you're going to learn is they're pretty good, and I think they're going to win both games. But we'll see.
Sam, staying on Creighton here for a minute. I've been having this debate with some people a little bit over the last couple of days. I thought a lot of what we saw on Friday against Butler was a lack of ability to adjust defensively to what Butler was doing, or at least of Butler's ability to take advantage of what Creighton wanted to give them. Do you think it was more of a defensive issue for Creighton, or, you know, just Butler was on a heater and there was not a lot you could do, or is there maybe a little bit of something in the middle there?
Oh, both. And I think McDermott spoke to it on Friday night. It's both. Yeah, I think they didn't play their best game defensively. Butler did probably make some shots that, you know, Creighton wasn't expecting to make. He gave Butler a lot of credit there were some moments in there, and again, I think you have to, every time you come out, you got to be ready. If you're at home, you have to be ready to leverage the crowd, and the crowd has to be ready to leverage you.
Mm-hmm.
And there are just times when I think it takes them a little while to get going, and the crowd, and they usually need a J run. A lot of times when a team is as good as Creighton is, and is so comfortable with playing the pace that Creighton play, they kind of figure that at some point during the game, the opponent's going to get tired, and they're just going to win. That's just as simple as that. And whether they win by 5 or they win by 11, everybody will say the game was close, but they'll win the game at the end. And Creighton and Butler just won the game. Simple as that. I mean, that happens sometimes. I think Creighton will take its chances playing that pace with an opponent like Butler. The challenging games for Creighton, one of them is going to be Providence for sure, because Providence is going to play a little bit different pace. But it's Connecticut, and Villanova, the teams that will slow you down and will sort of take the air out of the ball and play physical, and kind of drag the game along. And Villanova is a really challenging team for Creighton because they will drag everybody to their level. And so a lot of games are close. They're going to beat some teams that nobody expects them to beat, and then they're going to lose some games that they probably shouldn't lose. That's usually what happens to them. And Creighton's going to have to watch that one. That's going to be one that they've got to be careful of, because Villanova on the road, that's going to be tough. So yeah, I mean, Providence is one to watch. Xavier's going to be a shootout. It always is. I think they'll win it. It's going to be an interesting end of the year. If Creighton is in that 3 to 6 range, that's what you want to be in. That 3 to 6. You'll live even with a 7 if the 2 is weak. What you want to stay out of is the 8-9, and they're going to stay out of the 8-9. They're going to be somewhere in the 3-6 range. Get to the second weekend. Play a number 1 seed after they've been knocked around a little bit for an opening weekend. I'm sure Creighton loves its chances right now to get to the Final Four, but they probably could use one more player off that bench. Whoever that is, I don't know. They get some more consistency off the bench. I'm sure they'd be thrilled if they do that over the last month.
Yeah, Sam, you mentioned that bench. Obviously, the lack of production off the bench is a concern, but I think the bigger concern, at least for me, is the wear and tear on the starters. You look at that Butler game, you've got 40 full minutes out of Shireman, Ashworth, and Alexander. Then you get 38 out of Kalkbrenner. We saw the 2-minute stretch from Fred King in the first half. It didn't go well. He was on the milk carton after that. The only guy to get significant minutes off the bench was Farabello. We've seen Isaac Trout's minutes cut, and we really haven't seen anybody else get much of a shot off the bench there. I mean, at this point, are you more concerned about the wear and tear on the starters, or are you more concerned about the fact that outside of Farabello, I'm not even sure who the option off the bench would be?
Well, I think the wear and tear on starters is real, and I'm sure they'll find ways to mitigate that in practice or in travel situations. This will be an interesting week because they're on the road. Travel takes something off of you. The Providence game is late. The Xavier game is early. And so what you're really cutting a half a day off there. If the Xavier game was at 8:00 at night, it's like, 10 extra hours. So it's going to be a tight week, and they'll have to figure it out. As far as who comes off the bench, well, I don't know. I mean, it could be Trout. They're going to play some games where his presence is beneficial. King's probably going to play more. That's a story, and we'll pursue that. Fred King has not played as much this year as he did last year, and some of that is because Kalkbrenner didn't get mono for a month. But I mean, I'm surprised a little bit that it felt like King had a nice rookie year, and he it doesn't feel like he's played quite as well this year, and that would be interesting to. His numbers haven't changed that much if you're looking at the per 40, but it looks like he doesn't play quite as much, and we'll see what happens down the stretch. But I mean, it was going to be a tight bench no matter what. That's just kind of how it was going to be. They're going to go 8 deep. Jason Green was injured. Stotzler's not ready. I'm a little surprised that Jonathan Lawson hasn't been more than he has been. I think that's one thing that, I'm sure they were hoping to get more out of that. Lawson, the transfer from Memphis, and he hasn't done a ton. So, I'm sure they'll get contributions where they can. I mean, I guess the point I'm making is it felt like they sort of willingly let Sharif Mitchell go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like that would have been better off keeping him and not signing a couple other guys.
Yeah, that might have fixed some of their problems, yeah.
Because that's a defender right there.
Yeah.
That's a guy that can come out and pull someone down. And so, I don't know. I mean, they'll assess it after the season. They got to know who they got coming back and who they don't. They got an incredible recruiting class. We have a story this morning on Jackson McAndrew. He's an incredible player.
Yep.
And he's going to be a great player at Creighton. So, I think they'll figure it out. We always knew this was going to be a tight bench. You want to keep this group together because you're not going to make a run to the Final Four with a 10-deep roster. It's the big three plus Ashworth, who's really come on, and Mason Miller and Farabella, and that's what it's going to be. It helps with chemistry, and they have that.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate your time as always, and we will talk to you again next week.
Have a great week.
That is Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline. Want to tell you real quick about our friends over at Dyer Law. If you've been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or visit Dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law. Coming up next, we're going to hand out some awards for Creighton and Nebraska men's basketball. It's Grammy season. Just had the Grammys last night, so we're going to get in some Grammy categories. I'll explain what that means, and we'll hand out some hardware, pretend hardware. I don't have actual trophies here. Coming up next year on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
My brand new album.
We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
My brand new album comes out April 19th. It's called The Tortured Poets Department.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And we are brought to you by our friends at the Team Jack Foundation. Team Jack Foundation has the focus of finding better treatment for kids fighting brain cancer and one day a cure. To date, they've raised over $12 million towards this goal. And the reason it's so important is because the treatments being used today are decades old and highly toxic to the children. Even if they survive the brain tumor, they're often left with lifelong issues due to the toxicity of the treatments. Finding better treatments and one day a cure is an absolute must. That's what Team Jack Foundation is focused on. They are currently funding 13 projects with such national institutions such as Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and Columbia University. Of course, they partner with University of Nebraska Medical Center for the Nebraska Childhood Brain Tumor Program as well. If you want to get involved and help with their goals of finding better treatments and one day a cure, go to teamjackfoundation.org to learn about events, how to get involved, and of course, you can donate right there at teamjackfoundation.org as well. That's the Team Jack Foundation. Wanted to switch gears here a little bit, sticking with a little bit of local basketball here, but you know, the Grammys were on last night and kind of had them on in the background. I kind of like seeing some of the cool performances and stuff like that. I don't really necessarily care about the awards that much.
There was no Creed, so.
There was no Creed. They weren't nominated for anything, which is beyond me. I don't understand how that even happened. But
have they ever won a Grammy or anything?
I don't know.
Like any American Music Award or anything?
I'm sure they've won like something at some point.
MTV Award or something?
Yeah, it seems like maybe they're an MTV Award group. I don't know.
Yes, 2.
2 Grammys?
2 Grammys, 2003, 2001.
Let's go.
Rock performance by a duo or group.
There we go. That's right. Put some respect on Creed's name over there. No, there was like a really cool performance with was it Tracy Chapman and Luke Combs singing
that was cool.
Fast Car. So that's super cool. Just stuff like that, you really appreciate. But kind of got the wheels turning a little bit. I wanted to hand out some awards to Nebraska and Creighton basketball. We're going to do men's basketball now. We're going to do women's basketball in the next hour. But so I came up with a few categories and kind of correlated them from what they mean with the Grammys to what I think they mean for the men's basketball teams for Creighton and Nebraska. So here are my categories. I've got Album of the Year, which I've just got. That is the best body of work for the season so far. Okay, that's category 1. Category 2, Best New Artist, pretty self-explanatory. Which newcomer has made the biggest impact for either team? Number 3, Breakout Performer. That's more of, don't have to be new, but you kind of are putting your name on the scene in a different way than you have for the first time. Number 4, we've got Song of the Year. For me, that's your best individual performance we've seen for just one player on either team who just had the one kind of transcendent performance of the year so far. And then the last one, Artist of the Year. I kind of look at this as a most valuable player who's been the MVP for either team out of the course of the season. So we only have one winner. I'm not taking one from each team here. We're not doing that. It's the best from Creighton and Nebraska. Put them all in one pool and combined there. Do you have a place you want to start?
Oh, geez. Let's go Album of the Year.
Album of the Year. All right. So there's a lot of possible candidates here. Obviously, for Creighton, you've got the big three: Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander, Ryan Kalkbrenner, all put together great seasons so far. For Nebraska, you've got obviously Rink Mast and Keisei Tominaga would probably be your two candidates there. Do you have a guy that pops to your mind? You're like, that's the guy that's put together the best season so far.
See, some of these categories I feel like could overlap.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, Baylor Shireman, in my mind, is the guy that's put the best body of work together consistently throughout the entire year for his team.
That's who I have as well. Baylor Shireman averaging 18 points, 8 rebounds, almost 4 assists a game. And the interesting thing about Baylor is those are 18 points, career high for him, even coming from South Dakota State. He never averaged more than 16 points a game there, right at his career high in rebounds as well, and has been the most consistent performer for Creighton game in, game out on the offensive side of the ball. To me, Album of the Year, no-brainer, was Baylor Shireman. Honorable mention to Rink Mast, who's been really good, but the numbers for Baylor are just better, and it's hard to argue with those. All right, let's do we'll save Artist of the Year. That's my MVP. We'll save that for last.
Okay.
Let's do Breakout Performer of the Year.
Okay.
There's a few candidates for this one as well. It seems like I think you could throw CJ Wilcher in this category.
That's what I was thinking.
I think you could throw, there's really not anyone for Creighton.
No one surprises me. Right?
Yeah.
Like the guys that are stepping up are the guys who I thought would step up.
The guys that are good are the guys that were supposed to be good, right? You could maybe have made an argument for Mason Miller earlier in the year because he was shooting the ball at, I think, literally 58% for the season. He's come back down to earth a little bit.
It could be Stephen Ashworth at the end of the year.
It could be. He's really started to come on late. I've got a wild card out there that I think is my winner. I've got Sam Hoiberg.
Oh, I love that.
Because, I mean, listen, the numbers are almost identical to last year, and they're not impressive. Like, the numbers themselves, you're talking 4 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists a game. You're looking at it, and you're like, whatever, right? If you're just looking at the numbers. But if you watch this team play on, like, a game in, game out, week in, week out basis, that dude is so impactful in a way that I don't think anybody saw coming.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the numbers are almost identical, he's been way more impactful this year. His defense has been really important, and he has been a super key contributor to the 2 biggest wins for Nebraska in Purdue and in Wisconsin. That dude, to me, is the guy that outside of your, the obvious ones, Keisei Tominaga, Rink Mast, That's the guy that I think of as maybe the most impactful for either of these teams outside of the guys who are like, well, I knew this guy was going to be good, right? Or you have to have this guy be good. He's that guy that just is sort of an X factor that I'm not sure a lot of people saw coming.
I mean, he's the motor to that team. He's a guy that's going to put his body on the line and try to get the loose balls and try to, go for those big plays that might not show up on the stat sheet necessarily, but are huge for momentum. Sam Hoiberg is a fun player to watch, and I think he just kind of exemplifies everything that Nebraska basketball culture is trying to be. And yeah, I think that's a great pick, Ravi.
You love having Sam Hoiberg on your team. I would absolutely hate playing against him. He is one of those dudes. He's going to be the dude that picks up people full court in pickup ball when he's like 38. And I'm going to,
the effort's always there.
Everybody's going to hate it, but his team will win almost every time because of it. His effort and intensity. And not to, he had a couple big shots yesterday, big threes for Nebraska yesterday too. He has an uncanny knack of having big plays at crucial times. You really saw it on the defensive end against Wisconsin, and then he had that one layup at a really crucial time as well. Sam Hoiberg is just super impactful considering what the numbers are. Next one here. Let's do, we've got time for one more before the break here. Let's do best new artist.
Okay.
So this is the newcomer of the year. Obviously, this includes transfers and freshmen. Not a lot of freshmen on this list. I've got Rink Mast, obviously, as a potential candidate. Stephen Ashworth. Those are pretty much the two main candidates for Nebraska. You could also throw our guy, Bryce Williams, into that mix as well. He is in his first year from Charlotte. Obviously, Rink Mast in his first year from Bradley. Out of those three guys, or if I missed a guy, who you kind of lean to?
I'd go Mast here.
Yeah. I think that's the right answer. He has been, without Rink Mast, I don't know where this basketball team is, because he filled a huge void with Derek Walker leaving, and he's outperformed my expectations. He's basically come from the Missouri Valley to the Big Ten and has not missed a beat. His numbers are almost identical across the board. 14 points, 8 rebounds, few assists a game. To make that jump in competition and not miss a beat is incredible. Like, I can't even, we've seen Stephen Ashworth take some adjustment. Baylor Shireman last year took some adjustment. Rink Mast didn't miss a beat. Incredible performance this year for our new artist of the year, Rink Mast. Coming up next, we will finish out our categories here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back.
Everybody's faces, and I leaned over. Whoa, literally like I was looking.
This award is amazing, but I really hope that it doesn't change anything, because my life was beautiful yesterday.
We will be back.
Literally like I was looking at everybody's faces, and I leaned over and I was like, not a chance. Yo, I just want to say, everybody in this category, like, that was a crazy list of incredible people, incredible artists, incredible music.
We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
This award is amazing, but I really hope that it doesn't change anything because my life was beautiful yesterday.
Whoa, literally like I was looking at everybody's faces and I leaned over and I was like, not a chance. Yo, I just want to say everybody in this category, like that was a crazy list of incredible people, incredible artists, incredible music.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Heath making a very well-deserved comment. Says Frankie Fiddler gets Independent Artist of the Year for holding things down for UNO. Terrific call on that one, Heath. I agree 100% there. I know Anna does as well. TK says Creed's Grammy had to be the halftime performance. Yeah, that's iconic. With the guy flying around on streamers in Cowboy Stadium. Yeah, there's nothing. That's just not a Grammy. That's, I think one of the all-time moments in humanity. So I think that's I think we need to acknowledge that whenever we can.
What was it? Yeah, what was that in reference to?
It wasn't a Super Bowl. It was, if I remember correctly, it was a Thanksgiving Day game at Cowboy Stadium, and Creed was performing at halftime. And that's the one. Anytime if you've ever seen the memes with the like shirtless bald guy flying around on like streamers,
right?
That's what that's from.
Wow.
That's what that's from.
I think we've said the word Creed too many times during the show.
I don't think there's such a thing. I think you can't say
that's
it enough.
Iconic.
We should have a buzzer.
I don't think there is a buzzer. I think you could say it as much as you want, and it would just be great. Recapping the awards we put out so far. Album of the Year, that's the best body of work so far this season. We've got Baylor Shireman. Best New Artist, which is the best newcomer with the biggest impact, is Rink Mast. That one was pretty easy. And then Breakout Performer of the Year, I did Sam Hoiberg with his impact that he's had on Nebraska basketball, despite not putting up crazy numbers. But, man, you can feel it when that dude is on the floor. And, frankly, just the fact that he gives Fred Hoiberg somebody to put out there when Tominaga is struggling is huge. We were just talking about it with Sam at 8 o'clock. Creighton doesn't have a ton of options to throw out there when guys are struggling. Farabello seems to be the only guy off the bench that Coach Mack actually trusts with extended minutes. And the fact that you've got a guy like Sam Hoiberg for Nebraska is huge for them. I'm sure Creighton would kill for somebody they trusted as much as Fred Hoiberg trusts Sam, although, growing up in the same house might be helpful in terms of the trust factor. But I don't know, depending on what his relationship with his dad's like, that might hurt the trust factor too a little bit. It's hard to say. All right, 2 more categories left for the men's basketball teams. We will hit the women's basketball teams next hour. This one, let's do Song of the Year. That is the best individual performance in a single game so far this season. Tominaga almost won it last night.
Yeah.
To be fair, if he had come out with a victory, or if they'd been able to come out with a victory with the performance he put on last night, I'm pretty sure that's your winner, because it is a top 15. It would have been a top 15 road win. He goes for 31 points, 9 of 14 shooting, 5 of 7 from 3. That would have been, I think, the runaway for this category. Since it did come in a loss, I did not put it up for that. It was, I can't reward the L. It was a great performance, but had they come away with the W, I think that would have been the tiebreaker there. I was looking through these. There's not a ton of for Creighton, not a ton of just standout single game performances in big games for Creighton so far this year. So if you're looking at kind of what the Jays have done in terms of their wins this year, their best win is probably, definitely Alabama. But you look at that box score, no one really jumps out at you in a big way there. I don't think anybody, if I looked right, I think the season high score for Creighton this year is Kalkbrenner dropped 29 early in the season.
Yeah, no one's had a 30-burger or anything like that.
Yeah, no 30-point games. No, we had a couple close call triple-doubles early in the season.
Against Iowa.
Trey had one against Iowa. Baylor had one, I think, the very next game. It was really in close proximity to that one. Might have been Loyola Chicago 2 games later. But you look at the Jays' performances individually over the course of the season, you haven't really had one that jumps out to me. The one that jumped out to me, and for me, I think this is going to be the only 2-time winner we have in these categories. I've got Rink Mast against Ohio State.
Yeah.
34 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. That's that 7 of 9 from three-pointer game that he had. He was 13 for 17 from the field overall. As I was looking through, I was like, I think that's the best performance anybody's had this year.
So I kind of took it a different way, and maybe it's recency bias, but I was going to say CJ Wilcher against Wisconsin.
That was something that popped in my mind as well.
Right, because of that late run he had, but maybe didn't have the best, craziest game in itself, but still showed up in a crucial moment for one of the biggest wins in program history.
For sure. And that one, I should have mentioned that one. Thank you for calling that out. That honestly was the first one that came to mind and it probably is a little bit of recency bias on my part, but that was the first one that jumped out. I was like, man, he was incredible in that game. But just the overall kind of heater that Mast was on against Ohio State, it put it over the top for me. The fact that he also had the double-double in that one, I gave the nod to Mast, but I will say CJ Wilcher is a very worthy inclusion in the discussion for sure, because that was, I talked about it last week with Andrew. Without his performance, especially before the rest of the team started playing well in the second half, they're not even in a position to have a shot to come back against Wisconsin. So one of the better performances from either team this year. I agree with that 100%. And again, if Nebraska pulls it out yesterday, K-State's performance is the runaway winner, and I don't think there's any question about that. All right, so last category, Artist of the Year. This is who has been the most valuable player for either team this season. You've got your usual suspects, right? Rink Mast, Keisei Tominaga for Nebraska. I don't know that I would put anybody else in that category for Nebraska. I mean, Bryce Williams has good numbers, but I don't look at him and say that's the most valuable player for Nebraska. I don't think that he sticks out that way for me. And then you've got the big three for Creighton, Baylor, Trey, and Kalkbrenner. Where are you leaning for Artist of the Year / MVP?
Yeah, I think you'll agree with this too, but it has to be Ryan Kalkbrenner. I think he just anchors that Creighton team so well, and they go as he goes. And when they can get him going in the paint or vice versa, it opens things up on the perimeter. And even if Kalk can hit a couple threes in a game, I think he brings so much value to that Creighton team that, just can't be overstated. And you think back to last year when he had mono, of course, you see how glaring it was. Mm-hmm. It's just a glaring difference of this team. And I think this year, just having him healthy and playing at a high level, I think is just huge for Creighton and just how they operate in general.
Yeah, I agree. I've got Ryan Kalkbrenner as well. He's got career highs in points, ties his career high in rebounds, ties his career high in blocks per game. He has, again, been hyper efficient, shooting 63% from the field over the course of the season. If you want to get like real nitty gritty into the stats, he's one of the most efficient players in the country in all metrics, but when double teamed, he's shooting like 70% from the field when double teamed this year. And then the part of the floor that really separates him from Trey or Baylor is that defensive presence. The entire Creighton defense revolves around Ryan Kalkbrenner. That's something you can't really say about either Rink Mass, certainly not about Keisei Tominaga on the other side with Nebraska. And I will say it's, you mentioned the mono stretch last year where obviously he wasn't healthy and it was glaringly obvious how much he meant to Creighton. You can even see it this year, right? Whether he's sick or just not available or whatever, when he's not playing at his best, Creighton really tends to struggle. You saw that against Butler, I thought, whether it was his fault, whether it was the way the coverage was working, he didn't seem to be able to contest either in that drop coverage or at the rim quite the way that he normally does. And as a result, Butler was able to get pretty much whatever they wanted. His ability on both ends of the floor, there's a chance that he could win another Big East Defensive Player of the Year award, and he's averaging almost 17 points a game now. He has had a huge year for Creighton, and I think he is by far the best player both ends of the floor on either of these two teams. And I don't know that it's particularly close.
I would agree. I mean, you look at Keisei, and his defense would have to immensely improve to be in that conversation. I mean, you can't compare a two-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year to a great Steph Curry-like shooter, right? It doesn't matter how good you are offensively, but to really be that guy for a team, you have to be great on both ends. And I think that's what Ryan Kalkbrenner does so efficiently too. And the way he's been able to finish, you can just tell the difference in the maturity and physicality and just like the growth, the physical growth of Ryan Kalkbrenner, how much bigger he's gotten. I think he said he gained like 30 pounds. It might be more than that. It might have been up to like 40 or 50. I don't remember exactly what that number was, but a significant amount of weight put on, just gotten his body better and just can finish at the rim so much better, turn around, make different moves, make guys miss. I think he's just grown so much athletically, and man, yeah, he's that guy for Creighton, and there's no denying.
Lots of agreement on the YouTube stream. Travis, TK, Drunk Monk all chime in. The Wiltshire versus Wisconsin or Mass versus Ohio State. And then obviously Tominaga versus Illinois if they come out with the win. Drunk Monk also mentions grew up in Omaha and has watched all these teams for a long time. Cornhusker team has been the most fun to watch this season. His favorite since that NIT championship team back in the 90s. We appreciate everybody chiming in on the stream. Coming up next, Vinnie Iyer to cover the NFL.
We will be back. We will be back. Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I think, I feel like every step that you take in it, so I do feel like I'm prepared, I'm ready, and I can't wait.
We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I think, I feel like every step that you take in this sport and really in life, it's for a reason. And I think this whole year building that trust, like we talked about, was for a reason to be equipped and well prepared for this next year when everybody is looking at me. So I do feel like I'm prepared, I'm ready, and I can't wait.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for this third hour, we're also on KFOR in Lincoln. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Vinnie Iyer. He covers the NFL for the Sporting News. Vinnie, how are you this morning?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We appreciate you joining us. It's the week leading up to the Super Bowl. We're feeling good, excited about the big game coming up here. But before we get to the matchup between the Chiefs and the 49ers, I wanted to ask you about some of the NFL awards that the Sporting News put out last week. I know there was a pretty heavy flavor of the Dolphins and Lions in that group. Was there anybody that ended up winning those awards that the Sporting News crew voted on that surprised you a little bit, or did things kind of go how you thought they would?
Well, a couple things surprised me. I think people were into the Lions a lot across the league. There's a lot of different head coaching candidates that were in the play for Coach of the Year. You had Kevin Stefanski, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan with what he did. You have D'Amico Ryans as a rookie. So there are a lot of good candidates there. So it surprised me just how much the Lions got the love, not only for Dan Campbell, but for Brad Holmes as their executive of the year. I mean, he's done a great job. And just the love and people rooting for the Lions outside of Detroit, because this is voted on by peers. So executives vote for executives. You've got coaches voting for coaches, and also looking at the all-pro team. And then you have players looking at players. So there was a lot of respect there. There was also a lot of respect for Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill, where, look, Christian McCaffrey easily could have been the offensive player of the year, but that was going to Tyreek Hill. And then you look at Tua, I mean, he played all 17 games. That was a big development for him. I know there were other guys. DeMar Hamlin, I think, maybe was perceived as not playing too much. I know of all the comebacks, that's probably the greatest he can ever make, but I think that was looked at, okay, he didn't play a significant role on this team, so let's go there. And I don't think Joe Flacco played enough here in the stretch run for the Browns to say that he would be a candidate. So it means a lot of different things to different people. So maybe a few surprises there. And then one that might surprise some readers is Puka Nacua over C.J. Stroud. But look, when you set the record for receptions and yards as a rookie receiver in this league, not very easy to do. And I think that's why he was rewarded.
We're talking with Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News. He covers the NFL. Looking at the All-Pro team, I think maybe the only surprise that would jump out to most people is maybe Raheem Mostert in that second running back spot. Obviously, McCaffrey was going to take one of those, but Mostert, you call him a late bloomer in the write-up there. 31 years old, has his best season of his career. Just kind of, how did he get to this point where at age 31 he's able to put up 1,000 yards and 18 touchdowns?
Yeah, I think it was the right system. He's been in the system for a long time. We know that with San Francisco, going back to the zone blocking system. I mean, started out as a special teams guy, so the fact that he developed into this over his career and persevered to stay in the league. A lot of running backs are long gone, especially special teams types guys, but he's stuck around with his speed, his knowledge of the offense, being able to be relied upon whenever he gets called upon, and it's really good for him. I mean, all the injuries he's had, I mean, go figure, where's his jersey number 31? He's just a touchdown machine this season. So he could have gone in many different ways. I think you had Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe didn't put together the rookie numbers we expected. You had Nick Chubb get hurt. Austin Eckler kind of faded. Jonathan Taylor didn't play for a while either. So it kind of opened the door for a kind of a surprise second running back behind McCaffrey. And I think that's led to Mostert. And I think, again, he has a very respectable story that a lot of people would like to follow in this league.
One of the other awards was Coordinator of the Year, Mike McDonald of the Ravens, their defensive coordinator. Obviously, he is off to go be the head coach of the Seahawks now. In your mind, was it clear cut that he was the best coordinator this year, or did how much consideration did the guy on the other side of the ball in Baltimore get, or a guy like Ben Johnson that was a really popular name this year?
Yeah, I think McDonald, just given the expectations for the Ravens defense, I think there were some pieces there, but I don't think anyone expected them to lead the league in sacks with 60, be this great pressure defense. He really was great at mixing up the secondary. They often used 3 safety looks back there that were very effective. He knew how to use Geno Stone and Kyle Hamilton, the 2 safeties, to maximum effect on the back end to make big plays. So it was innovative scheming. So sometimes you look at just the results, but here you look at the process that led to the results. It was very surprising and very innovative, where you might see more teams do that. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for them in the end in beating the Chiefs, but no one can say the Ravens defense didn't show up in that game.
We're talking with Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News. Vinnie, I wanted to stay on kind of the coaching trend there for a little bit, because with the hiring of McDonald in Seattle and Dan Quinn with the Commanders, it appears we will have the first season in the NFL since 1974 that Bill Belichick will not be working in the league. How do you think we got to this point where none of the open jobs worked out for Bill Belichick?
Yeah, I don't know if any of these jobs were big enough for Bill Belichick in terms of just giving him the entire power, but also from the other perspective of, did these teams feel like they were in position to get a Bill Belichick, right? In terms of, you got to do some work on a lot of these rosters, even including the Chargers, where Jim Harbaugh went. I mean, the difference between the Chargers and all those other openings, you have a very clear quarterback answer for the future that you can get to winning rather quickly. But in all the other cases, once that was not available, I mean, you got to figure out quarterback. I mean, starting in where he left in New England, but Atlanta, Tennessee, there's a lot of questions. Carolina, whether it's an existing quarterback or the future quarterback, that's a lot. And maybe some didn't see Bill Belichick as a rebuilder type that could do that based on his recent game track record. Some maybe saw that, hey, wait, how long is he going to be able to do this? He's going to turn 72. We might need to have a guy hang around for a few years. So I don't think anything lined up. Now, that said, if the Cowboys or Eagles had become available here, knowing the nature of those teams, and Jerry Jones in particular, if they were on demand here for trying to win a championship, I think that would be more of an appealing team. So let's watch out for next year. That might be a better move anyway for Belichick as he tries to pass George Halas and Don Shula as the all-time coaching wins leader.
Well, so you kind of answered my next question there, because as we get further away, another year, maybe you see him get a opportunity next year. But if it doesn't happen next year, are we getting to the point where Bill Belichick's career might just kind of unceremoniously be over?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing he could do, I don't see him doing this, is taking a defensive coordinator job somewhere. Maybe it's Miami. Maybe Nick Saban convinces him to go to his old NFL stop or something, and that's where they try to win. But I can't see that at this point. I mean, I don't think he's one of those guys that we've seen in the past, like a Dom Capers or even Steve Spagnuolo or Dick LeBeau, right? I don't see late career got his chance as head coach because he's been way more successful than all those guys as a head coach. So I don't see him kind of just falling back. Same thing with Pete Carroll. I don't see, based on everything he's accomplished, I don't see coming back in that capacity. I could be totally wrong, and it could be more like, I'm bored and I need a defensive hobby here to stay in the league. But
his retirement gig.
Yeah. Overall, though, I think it's probably next year or bust. I think he has to get back in the league because, again, every year passes, the opportunities go away, and time is running out on him breaking that record. But I think, unfortunately, I really think this is a part of it, why he wants to keep coaching, is I think he definitely wants to be on top of that record book, being such a historian of the game, on top of being a great tactician.
We're talking with Vinnie Iyer of the Sporting News covering the NFL. We had some movement, some weird goings on with Cliff Kingsbury and where he ends up as offensive coordinator. Looked like that was all but a done deal with the Raiders. That falls apart seemingly at the last minute. He ends up with the Commanders. Is he a guy that is in high demand in the NFL in terms of offensive coordinator jobs? Or I guess kind of how did that situation play out?
Yeah, I think definitely the Commanders are trying to really, if you look at it, they're really trying to tap into what the Falcons did a few years ago. Dan Quinn was the head coach. He had a hotshot offensive coordinator with Kyle Shanahan. This was in Super Bowl 51. They went and had Matt Ryan become the MVP. So, look, there's some parallels there, right? If you want to go defensive-minded head coach, it makes sense to bring in more of a guy that's going to be a little bit more radical offensively, so you have the guy keeping in check. But maybe it's a whole ploy, right? And trying to make sure that you're an appealing destination for Caleb Williams. And I think the Commanders probably said, look, we're the number 2 pick right now. There's a chance the Bears don't go for a quarterback. If not, we don't have to do as much to trade up as the Raiders do to go get Caleb Williams, who Kingsbury worked with at USC. So it makes a lot of sense. I think you look at that, and you also look at the Justin Fields situation, what the trickle-down is, right? The Raiders might be easier for us to get Justin Fields. So it's very interesting what's going on with the number 1 pick, right? I mean, the Raiders have Luke Getsy now instead of Kingsbury, so he was tied to Fields last year in Chicago. So it might be an interesting battle developing between Washington and Las Vegas trying to make a move here for Caleb Williams. So I'm going to watch that. That's going to be one of the best draft storylines as we go forward.
Well, Vinny, I wanted to switch gears to the big game coming up, of course, on Sunday. Chiefs 49ers, a lot of Chiefs fans here in Omaha, Nebraska. What's going to pose the biggest challenge for Patrick Mahomes at Kansas City?
Well, you look at this matchup, and I think they kind of have to stick with what they've done. Is that San Francisco has been the worst run defense in the playoffs so far. They've had some issues, especially on the outside, and that's been the case all season long. Inside, they're a little bit better since Eric Armstead returned, but when you look at it overall, I mean, that's what the Chiefs need to do. They've been very committed to the run, not only having some success, but they're sticking with it. So that takes pressure off Patrick Mahomes. They're changing the way they approach it, and the 49ers need to be prepared for this. So this is going to be a running team that's going to take pressure off Mahomes. So, and another thing that's really not worked in the 49ers favor, typically they've been good at covering the tight end, but that's kind of fallen apart as well this season. So some of the things that you could count on with San Francisco that could really hurt Kansas City are not happening in this game. So really it's about the Chiefs being patient. Being patient, don't force things that aren't there. They're going to be a little bit tempting here because the secondary of the 49ers can give up some big plays. But if the Chiefs are methodical in this game and do what their game plan asks for, I think they'll win, because you look at the other side, I think they do have a big defensive edge in this game.
So, Vinny, you kind of mentioned the defensive edge there. What is the path to victory for the 49ers if they are able to pull this off?
I think the 49ers need to just make the centerpiece Christian McCaffrey, and if he can get going early, I think the Chiefs are going to be trouble, because the Chiefs' weakness is also run defense. If you look at it from the season, the thing that helps the Chiefs is a lot of teams get out of their heads, right, and say, oh, we got to go keep up with Patrick Mahomes, but that's not looking at the way the Chiefs are playing now, right? If you want to win this game, you got to get physical, get down to their level, commit to the run. And you want to take pressure off Brock Purdy, because you saw the Chiefs secondary. They're nasty. You don't want to get things downfield, force your quarterback to throw balls deep. You know, that's a strength of Brock Purdy, pushing the field here with his arm, but that's not how you want to approach this game as 49ers. So it'll be interesting, this chess match. I think running is also going to protect the defense on both sides. So if the Chiefs can slow down McCaffrey, I think that's going to be the biggest thing. If they can do that, then they can feel really good about winning, and everything else kind of falling into place.
Vinny, you mentioned Brock Purdy there, and I'm glad you mentioned that one of his strengths is pushing the ball down the field, because there's this narrative out there that he's this dink and dunk quarterback, and obviously he's got a lot of playmakers that can do a lot with the ball after the catch, but he also has, I believe he led the league in completion yardage through the air before the receiver ran after the catch as well. What do you expect to see from Brock Purdy in this game? You mentioned the really good Chiefs secondary. Obviously, it's his first time in a moment like this. Do you have any idea what to expect from Brock Purdy?
Well, I think Brock Purdy's going to have to trust the guys around him a little bit more, shorter passes. And the funny thing is, people talk about Brock Purdy kind of as a caretaker game manager, but I don't think he is. And that sometimes is his weakness. You know what I mean? Like, he's throwing downfield and taking those shots, and he's so confident in his arm, and he's put the ball in incredible places downfield that sometimes it's okay not to do that and say, I'm going to check down and I'm going to throw a little bit shorter here. I know he can do that and he can execute that, but when you're facing a higher degree of difficulty against the Chiefs secondary and their pass rush, I think he has to play within himself. So it's kind of weird that people, I think he's far from a game manager, because he takes a lot of chances, and I think that's where you're more concerned with him sometimes, where, look, he's great and accurate and puts a nice deep ball there, but if he's forcing it and he's under pressure, feeling a little bit off and throwing just a little bit too high or rushed, that's his problem. So I think maybe playing a little bit more contained and realizing as much as he needs to play well to win this game, it's more about trusting everything around you, because that's really the key to winning the game for the 49ers.
Vinny, when you are looking at, you mentioned, obviously you think this might be a run-focused game in terms of both offenses. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey better than Isaiah Pacheco, but the 49ers rush defense has really struggled compared to the Chiefs rush defense. How do you balance that out in your mind, and maybe who do you give the edge there to?
Well, I think the biggest matchups we're going to watch are going to be along the lines here. I mean, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, if they can take over the game inside, I think it's over. I mean, the 49ers want to play this as an outside game. They want to get Nick Bosa and Chase Young after Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor. We know those guys have struggled a lot with different pass protections on the edge this season. So they want to make it an outside game. The Chiefs need to make it an inside game. And I think you look at the Chiefs, I mean, they can get to you inside and then outside on the other side. If you think about that with the way George Karlaftis is playing, the way that Chris Jones is playing. So their pass rush is a little bit more versatile. I also know that Steve Spagnuolo isn't afraid to blitz with key spots where the 49ers are not really a blitzing team. So when you look at the way the pressure breaks down, if the Chiefs can wear the 49ers down inside, then they won't have to worry about what happens on the outside.
Vinnie, we're 6 days out from the Super Bowl. If I had to pin you down and get a prediction on who you think ends up taking home the Lombardi Trophy, who are you going with at this point?
Yeah, I'm definitely going with the Chiefs. I mean, it's not really – I mean, everyone's going to say, how can you pick against Patrick Mahomes? That's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the profile of these teams. What team has a better defense? It's the Chiefs. What team has a better quarterback? It's the Chiefs. What team has the better coaching in these types of games? It's the Chiefs. So that's how I look at it. I think it's a complete way of the Chiefs handling this game. Now, I'm not saying they're going to blow them out, but they don't need to, right? And they just need to win the game like they've done before to Patrick Mahomes. So, again, when I'm looking at the Chiefs, I look at a complete team with a better team on the field. That's what I'm going with.
That's Vinnie Iyer. He covers the NFL for the Sporting News. Vinnie, we appreciate your time as always, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
All right, thank you.
That is Vinnie Iyer from the Sporting News on the War Horse Sportsbook Hotline. Good stuff there. He's one of the first people I've heard talk about how he thinks the Chiefs are actually better everywhere outside of quarterback. Most people kind of lean, that the 49ers are the more complete overall team and that Patrick Mahomes is the wild card there. I tend to believe that as well. I do think he brings up some good points about some of the holes that have been poked in the 49ers defense as of late.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the secondary and you can point to that, but also the run defense, I think, is going to be an interesting factor. But if I'm looking at McCaffrey versus Pacheco, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey every single time.
Yep,
right?
100%.
And then you look at Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes. Of course, you're going to take a guy in Mahomes. So I think it's a really interesting balance matchup. And I think each other's strengths are similar and each other's weaknesses are similar. So I think it's going to be a good one. But I just look at what Brock Purdy can also do with all the weapons he has around him. And I liked how Vinny actually had good things to say about Brock Purdy. Like, I'm a big Brock Purdy fan.
Me too.
And I don't think he's a game manager. I think he can extend plays with his legs. I think he has incredible accuracy, and he's had a great QBR, like one of the best in the league the entire season. So it's kind of incredible to me that he has to get to this point of bringing a team to a Super Bowl in his first full year of starting, that people still disrespect him so much. And like, I was going to ask Vinny too, before we let him go, like if Brock Purdy wins the MVP and obviously wins the Super Bowl, would he get the respect? Would he get put in the elite category in the NFL for quarterbacks? I honestly don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. I think people would continue to point to, because, you were kind of comparing these different units for the team. If you compare weapons for Brock Purdy, I think everybody would take those weapons over what the Chiefs have, right?
Totally.
The only guy that's close is Travis Kelce, and George Kittle might be the closest thing.
The next best, Travis Kelce,
I mean, obviously a lot of people like Sam Laporta. He had a really good year, but Kittle is incredible. Had over 1,000 yards this year, a really, really good tight end, maybe a little bit better blocking tight end than Travis Kelce is, which is huge in the 49ers offense. But outside of those two, which, you can give Kelce a slight edge, but it's not by much.
Yeah. Every
other position in terms of weapons on offense goes 49ers, right? So because of that, you look at it, and I think you're right. I don't think Purdy, even if they do win the Super Bowl, he wins the Super Bowl MVP, I don't think he is going to get.
Shame.
Yeah, it really is. Because, I mean, you look at what the 49ers had before him, right? They brought in Jimmy Garoppolo, who was fine. He got him to a Super Bowl as well. He is a fine quarterback, but he wasn't able to provide the offense with this level of playmaking that Brock Purdy is.
And you never heard people saying that about Jimmy G, about that he was just a game manager, whatever. Like,
and you saw the way that Shanahan called games. He didn't trust Jimmy G.
Yeah.
He trusts Brock Purdy dramatically more than he trusts Jimmy G. And then you've got Trey Lance, who they drafted to be that guy. They made him the starter at the start of last year before he got injured. That was the dude. And he's got the physical pedigree. He's got the athletic pedigree. He wasn't able to make the plays that Brock Purdy is. So obviously, people are like, oh, well, anybody can do it in this offense. Well, obviously they can't, because this was the third guy they tried in the last 2 years to do it. And he's the only one that looked like this. Yeah. The pieces were all the same.
Out of all the NFL teams, out of all the NFC teams that were in the playoffs, is the 49ers the best chance to defeat the Chiefs?
Probably.
I would say 100%.
Yeah, I think they're the best. I mean, I thought the two best overall teams this year were the 49ers and the Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that they both had really complete teams. The Chiefs are interesting because they look a lot different than they have in years past, right? The defense is really good and the offense has struggled at points. But you could almost make the argument, and I'm not saying this is who Patrick Mahomes is as a quarterback, but he has managed games for what this team needs to a really effectively this year, right? I think he's understood, hey, this isn't a team where we're going to score 35, 38 points a game to win. It's, hey, I need to control the offense a little bit more. I need to control the flow of the game a little bit more. It's almost like in basketball when you want to control the pace a little bit. Patrick Mahomes has done a really good job.
He's a game manager. What are we talking about?
He's managed the game well. I don't know if I would call him a game manager. Coming up next, we're going to get to the Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Welcome back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. It is time now for the Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup. A reminder, the Warhorse Festival of Games going on right now. Your prop cards for the $100,000 prop card challenge are out today. You can make your picks for that $100,000 prop card challenge. You go 25 for 25, and you're staring at your chance for $100,000. If you got those entries qualified last month, you also are going to be up for the $20,000 grand prize drawing as well. Remember, once you make those picks on your prop card, you have to go to the casino in Lincoln, the Warhorse Casino in Lincoln. You have to be a rewards member and validate those entries to make sure you are eligible for the prizes. If you have any questions on how to do any of that, just go to warhorsecasino.com for more information, or go to the casino in Lincoln, Warhorse Casino, and they can help you out there as well. It should be super simple, though. Just swipe that card, your rewards card, once you make your picks, and it'll pop up to validate your entries. Just hit that validate button, and you should be good to go. But again, any questions, go to warhorsecasino.com. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. All right, it's time for the sports cleanup, trying to jump around a little bit to some of the things that we missed throughout the day and over the course of the weekend. One thing that I found super interesting was some of the, I asked Vinnie Iyer about this a little bit, but some of the coaching movement that we've seen, I know he seemed to think that there's maybe a better chance next year, but as Dan Quinn got hired by the Commanders, as Mike McDonald, there's too many Mike MCs out there, although I think McDonald is technically a MAC. McDonald gets the the Seattle Seahawks job. Not that I thought either of those were going to be Bill Belichick jobs, but I have this sort of sinking feeling. I don't know that we're going to see Bill Belichick on a sideline again.
It's kind of sad.
It really is, because it was very anticlimactic.
Yeah, we
right?
needed a farewell tour.
Or at least an unsuspecting playoff appearance or something. Like, Bill Belichick doesn't really strike me.
Can't go out like this.
Right? Like, he doesn't strike me as a farewell tour type guy. I don't know that he would sign up for all that, but I know it, from everything I've heard, he wants to break that all-time wins record. And I don't know if he's going to get that opportunity.
I don't know. And it's going to be, like I said, very, very somber not having a Bill Belichick on the sidelines if that's the case. But I mean, to what Vinnie was talking about, it has to be the right spot for him. I don't think he's just going to take anything. But
and it's not just he's not going to take anything. I think it has to be the right spot for them to be interested in him.
Right. And that is kind of a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
That somebody wouldn't want one of the greatest coach of all time on their sideline.
Well, and you think about the way, we talked about this some last week with Andrew, the way the NFL coaching trends have gone. For a while it was all retreads and all, guys that had NFL head coaching experience and all stuff like that. Now it's super young, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of guys in their 30s and early 40s. That's been the trend as of late, basically since Sean McVay got hired at 30 or 31 years old by the Rams several years back. It has been a dramatic shift towards young up-and-coming guys. And I just don't know where that leaves a Bill Belichick or a Pete Carroll and some of these guys that have had a ton of success in the NFL. I do think the Cowboys kind of would make sense. I do think the Eagles make sense.
Yeah.
The other one that kind of makes sense, I think the Bills would make sense too.
I could see that.
Got a quarterback in place. You've got a good running back in James Cook. You've got some pieces on defense at least. It's got to be a team like that, though, where they're trying to get over the hump, right? They're trying to get from, hey, we've had some success. We need to get to that next step.
Sure.
To me, those are the only teams that make a ton of sense for Belichick. And most of the time, those teams don't fire their coach.
I mean, if you're talking about teams that want to get over a hump, I think the number one team that comes to mind is the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And I would love to see Jerry Jones and Bill Belichick paired together. I don't know how that would go down.
That's the funniest thing, right? Is that's probably the best fit roster-wise.
Yeah.
It is probably the worst fit owner-wise, because there would be like a serious power struggle there.
Power trips for sure. I mean, both sides, but.
And imagine Bill Belichick, who wants to say nothing to the media, and Jerry Jones, who can't stop talking to the media.
Who wants to talk on the radio shows all the time, right? But I think that'd be an interesting dynamic. I'm also curious, at this point in Bill Belichick's career, how much is he willing to give up in his
That's a key too.
Creativity of his offense and defense, and like his own freedom and what he's wanting
and
to
his
call.
personnel decisions.
His personnel, like who's under him, who's on his roster, who's not, how they use that cap space. But I don't know. I think, does he give up some of that freedom for a coaching position in the NFL? That might be the only way he gets another job.
For a chance to go after that all-time record.
Got to put some pride to the side.
I do think, we saw this with his buddy Nick Saban.
Yeah.
As he modernized his offense. He hired a guy that was his polar opposite in Lane Kiffin to modernize his offense. And that's when the Alabama dynasty went to another level. Mm-hmm. Obviously not just with Kiffin, but then they brought in Sarkisian, who's obviously done a great job at Texas. Bill O'Brien. I know Alabama fans kind of had an issue with Bill O'Brien, but the offenses were still really good under Bill O'Brien. This is I think a very similar situation where Bill Belichick probably needs to let go a little bit of what his personal preference is in order to give himself an opportunity to continue to win games in the NFL. Because I firmly believe if Saban hadn't made that change, they probably start to fall off a little bit. Other teams were catching up. Obviously, we saw Georgia, we saw LSU, but because they were able to modernize their offense, they were able to stay in that neighborhood for a little bit longer. We haven't really seen that from Bill Belichick. We haven't really seen the modernized offense. And now part of it is the quarterback situation they could never figure out after Brady. But I think being willing and showing that you're willing to hire a young up-and-coming coordinator will go a long way.
Go ahead, Shane.
If he does go somewhere and he fails, for whatever reason, whether it be the power struggle or he just can't, he just doesn't fit in there or whatever. Does an owner really want to take that responsibility and be that guy or be that team to
tarnish Bill Belichick's legacy?
Yeah.
I mean, I think people would view it as Bill Belichick tarnishing his own legacy,
yeah.
right? And like him letting down the owner more than the other way around. I mean, no one's going to be in trouble for hiring a guy that has won 6 Super Bowls, right? Like that's a very easy decision to defend, especially if he gives up personnel control, especially if he hires a kind of more innovative offensive coordinator. I don't think there's any risk really on an organization's part. It just doesn't seem to be the direction that teams want to go right now.
No, it's really interesting. And like that just has my wheels turning about if Belichick would ever go to Dallas. I have no idea if that's even really a remote possibility, but I think he holds his own legacy in his hands, right? He wants to get to that career win mark, but I think it's up to him. And then you go back to the Brady versus Belichick debate of, right, who's the cog in the machine. Not necessarily either one of them are, but who relied on who more? Was it Belichick or was it Brady? And right now it's looking like Belichick was more reliant on Tom Brady based upon how the seasons have gone with the Patriots since his departure. But I think if Bill Belichick does come back and coach, he might have a statement to make of, hey, I'm a great coach. It wasn't the right situation in New England post Tom Brady, and that's okay. It doesn't always need to work out that way, but I can adapt, get younger coordinators around me, and maybe give up a little bit of my power to make a great NFL team and go get that record.
Yeah, so he's 15 wins behind. So you're probably looking at 2 seasons there, right, to be able to get to that mark. That would, that it's reasonable. It's on the table if that's something, but I think he is going to have to give some stuff up. Speaking of Belichick's, ironically enough, Steve Belichick, his son, has gotten a job in coaching. He is going to be the defensive coordinator for the University of Washington. So under new head coach Jedd Fisch. Now, if you remember, Jedd Fisch went to Arizona from New England, so there's a pre-existing relationship there. So Steve Belichick will be the defensive coordinator at the University of Washington. So we will see a Belichick in the Big Ten next year.
We'll see the little Belichick tree trickle down. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. The Belichick coaching tree hasn't been great. It's been maybe his biggest indictment of his coaching career is he does not develop other head coaches, certainly not in the way that a Nick Saban does with that coaching tree. But that is your Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup. Coming up next, we're going to continue with our basketball Grammy Awards. That's a weird sentence to say, but it's coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up the show here on a Monday on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Ana Bellinghausen here with me as well. We are back in our basketball Grammys mode, this time for the Creighton and Nebraska women's teams. Anna, where did you want to start category-wise?
All right, well, we have to start with Album of the Year because it's the most intriguing in my opinion.
Album of the Year, okay. Give me some of the candidates. Where's your head at?
Okay, well, I'm going to go, obviously, you think about the big three again with Creighton. I think it's so funny how many parallels the men's and the women's team has. It's really unique. But
and even like stylistically.
Everything feels the same. And like when one team loses, I'm like, oh, is this going to happen? But the Creighton women's team beat Butler on the road, so they were safe in that bucket. But all right, so we got Emma Ronsick, Lauren Jensen, of course, and then Morgan Molly for Creighton. And then on the Nebraska side, you got Jazz Shelley, Alexis Markowski, been two of the top players all year long.
Yep.
I think you have to give the flowers to Emma Ronsick. She's been going absolute crazy, multiple games, over 30 points, pretty incredible stuff from Emma. And she's just been such a anchor on that team. And I think she's grown so much just within the paint and also her ability to be a perimeter shooter. She's 6'1", and it's crazy how she can just shoot it from three and also be such a presence inside. She rebounds, she can pass the ball well. But yeah, I think just the biggest factor on Creighton's team has been Emma Ronsick, and she's had a breakout year.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's where I lean as well. Obviously, you've got 18 points, 6 rebounds a game for Emma Ronsick. She's shooting about 49% from the field. You mentioned her versatility, her ability to be a 3-level scorer is really impressive. And it seems like she's found a level of consistency this year that, we kind of saw a flash of it 2 years ago in the Elite Eight run. And then it was a little up and down at times last year. It seems like the consistency has come a little bit more this year for Emma, and it's taken her to the next level. She's been unbelievable for the Jays this year. I do have to give honorable mention to Alexis Markowski.
100%. She's coming.
Averaging a double-double on the season, but I'll hold off since you said there's more.
She'll get another award, I promise.
I assume she would. All right, so that was Album of the Year?
Yep.
album of the year goes to Emma Ronzik of Creighton. What's next?
All right, best new artist has to be Natalie Potts of Husker women's basketball, 5-time Big Ten Player of the Week. Natalie has been incredible. You barely can tell that she's a freshman out there, not only because of her size, but also just how mature she is. She just blends in so well with that Husker team, and she does so much, whether that's passing or even getting offensive boards, and then just her ability to drive into the hoop and just be creative with how she scores. She's going to be a really impressive player down the road, and the fact that this is just her freshman season is amazing.
And kind of a unique figure in all four of these teams we've talked about between the men's and women's side. All the newcomers we talked about for Creighton and Nebraska men's were transfers, right? There's really no, they're old teams. Yeah. There's really no impact freshmen on either side. I mean, Eli Rice is probably the closest for Nebraska men's basketball, not in the same neighborhood as Natalie Potts, averaging 10 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Really effective in terms of efficiency from the field. Not really a shooter yet, doesn't have that part of her game down quite yet, but she doesn't take a ton of them either, just a couple of game, but hyper efficient, 54% from the field overall. If next year and the next coming years she can kind of get the jumper going as well, she's going to be super dangerous, but already having a great year.
Absolutely. All right, next one I got breakout performer. So somebody that might be a surprise this season, and I'm going to give that to Mallory Brake of Creighton.
Okay.
So looking at her statistics, I mean, she's not a scorer necessarily, but she is such a defensive player, and she's taken on the hardest assignments every single game for Creighton. And she's been incredible, just her presence in the post and also just making it tough for opponents to score around her. She's been so crucial, and yeah, she might not score 10 to 12 points a game, but she doesn't turn the ball over. She's efficient on the boards, and she also is a lockdown defender, and that's something that Creighton was really missing last year. And it's been great to see the evolution of Mallory Brake. And even Jim Flannery told me preseason, like, he did not expect Mallory to be the starter a week prior. Like, he didn't know. And he said that she's taken the biggest jumps over the offseason, has worked so hard on her game. And yeah, Mallory, kudos to Mallory. She's been a breakout performer.
Well, and you mentioned not a big scorer, just 5 points, 5 rebounds per game. But she, as you mentioned, has been a huge impact, not unlike our breakout performer on the men's side with Sam Hoiberg. There's some similarities there as well in terms of the way they impact a game without having to have the ball in their hands, without having to be a scorer. And I think that's probably, as basketball fans, as people that cover basketball, that's probably one of the things we don't pay enough attention to, because it's easy to overlook the people that impact winning without the ball. Those are incredibly valuable. So Mallory Brake, to me, I'm not even sure there's somebody else that, you could pick somebody else, but to me, I really think that kind of embodies what we're talking about here with breakout artists, just somebody that has a huge impact on the game that maybe the stat line doesn't really tell you a lot about.
Yeah, it's just something that you have to watch and see, and you would notice that with Mallory Brake. And if she were out of the ball game or whenever she does sub out, you can really tell how much of the defense surrounds Mallory. But next one up, I got Artist of the Year, and this we got to give it to Alexis Markowski. Averaging a double-double. She's leading the Big Ten in rebounds. She's been incredible in so many different categories, but this Nebraska team goes as Alexis Markowski goes, and she's just been a breakout player this year. So got to give her flowers. Alexis Markowski, she's been incredible.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, 16.5 points per game, over 10 rebounds per game, averaging that double-double. Just an incredible season for Alexis Markowski, for a Nebraska team that, I don't know if underperformed is right. I think they'd probably like to be a little bit better than 14-8
The
right
Rutgers
now.
loss was rough.
Yeah, that last one was
Beyond that, they've been good.
Yes, that's probably the one that is the least excusable, if that's the right word. That's one that if you're trying to be an NCAA tournament team, that's one of those you have to win type games, especially at home. Kind of a corollary to that Butler loss for Creighton men at home. Now Creighton isn't really in danger of missing the NCAA tournament at this point, but that's one of those where you're just, and again, another corollary, 1 point loss at home. That is one of those where if for whatever reason they don't make the tournament,
That's going to be what it was.
You're going to look back at that one and be like, man, really would like to have that one back.
Yeah, but I think this Nebraska women's team can really surprise some people down the stretch too. I think they can get some that people might be 50-50 battles, or ones that people may say that, I don't know, might count them out, but might not be against Iowa again. But there's
at least it's at home this time.
There's Ohio State, yeah. And Caitlin Clark could also, by the way, get the NCAA scoring record in Lincoln. So that would be pretty crazy to see.
That would be pretty crazy. It is, she's kind of about on pace to maybe have that record in Lincoln coming up on February 11th.
Do we really want to see it though in Lincoln?
Well,
I mean, I looked at it like a month ago, and I literally
I would love to see it.
I was trying to figure out what day it would fall on. I thought maybe it would fall like a day later, but if it does,
it could be a little bit later.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I would want to see it.
Yeah. Last time I checked a couple days ago, she'd kind of have to be like on one of her next couple games to be able to break it against Nebraska. But I don't know if I'm kind of one of those people that's always sort of cool to witness history, unless and I know Nebraska fans don't like Iowa, and I get that. I save my vitriol for Iowa mostly for the football team. I really I can't dislike Caitlin Clark.
Though if it does happen there and it doesn't happen on her home court, I mean, I suppose you could kind of look at it that way.
If I was Caitlin Clark, I would check myself out of the game 1 point before just to do it at home. Honestly, if you're winning by enough, I wouldn't discredit her for doing that, or their coaching staff for doing that.
Okay, so where are they?
She's 66 points away,
and she's got one game before Nebraska.
I think she. Let me check.
Because I think she just played one, right?
They just played against Maryland. She had 38.
So they have. Bringing up the schedule now. They've got if
Penn State, Michigan. Wait, no, just Penn State before Nebraska.
Yeah, so
one game.
She's 66 points away. So again, if she's kind of on that 30-ish,
that's very possible.
No, it's super reasonable for Caitlin Clark for sure. But they are back home the very next game against Michigan. So if she doesn't do it against Nebraska, as you said, if that game's, I mean, you look at the Nebraska game against Iowa at Iowa, that thing was pretty well in hand for the Hawkeyes. If it's another situation like that, I don't know that I'd blame her for being like, let's go get this thing at home.
So maybe she goes ham at Penn State, you said, and then they sit her for half the game for Nebraska.
She's such a competitor, though. I honestly don't even think it would cross her mind in the moment, and she would just be going off. Yeah. I don't think it would even.
It would have to be the coaches.
Yeah, they would have to pull her out.
Yeah, it wouldn't be.
And she'd be like, what?
Yeah, she'd be like, why are you taking me out of the game here? I don't think there's any chance that she would be the one doing it. I think it would be a coaching staff making a conscious decision to be like, hey, you're 6 points away. This game's in hand. We're up by, I mean, ideally Nebraska pulls an upset and we're having a different conversation here, right? But, what's maybe more likely, they got the game in hand. She's a couple points away. Just, maybe let it happen.
Why not make
home.
more history in Lincoln, Nebraska, though?
Let's do it. Hey, I'm all about, like I said, I don't have any dislike for Creighton Clark, and I'm always there to watch history. So I wouldn't be mad.
It's a win-win either way.
Wouldn't be mad if it happens at PBA. There's been a lot of cool moments at PBA this year. Let's add another one to the list. Anna, thank you so much for joining me today. Andrew Rogers will be back tomorrow. This has been Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln.